Our story begins with Lennon, who wakes up rubbing his aching head, recalling how he stayed up all night chasing a story until everything suddenly went dark. He wondered if he had actually died from exhaustion and ended up in hell. In that very moment, a mechanical voice boomed through the air. The voice announced that all survivors were now awake and issued the train rules. Discarding one's own train was strictly forbidden. Every 24 hours, the train would reach a new platform and stop for 3 hours, during which passengers could choose to disembark. The goal was to collect supplies and upgrade the train, but leaving before reaching a station was prohibited. Survive was the final, chilling command. The broadcast felt like a cold order that left him feeling deeply unsettled. He stood up and looked out at the endless wasteland receding silently beneath the wheels. The most prominent feature in the carriage was an oval device glowing with a light screen, the train control system. He couldn't help but walk over to touch it. The interface displayed several options: conductor information, train details, a chat room, and a trading platform. He opened the chat room, and the frantic messages flashing across the screen immediately began to grate on his nerves. People were screaming to be let go, boasting about their wealth, begging for medicine, or desperately calling out for their loved ones. One person even cheered about the transmigration, thrilled to skip work tomorrow. However, a mocking message soon caught Lin-An's eye. The user called everyone idiots, claiming it was just a reality TV show and that he was quitting. Immediately after, that person's name vanished. The chat room count plummeted from 10,000 to 9,999. He was dead. Lin-An's mind raced with 1,000 questions. He switched to the train details, a level 1 train with a speed of 20 kilometers per hour. Upgrading it required specific materials. It would take 100 kilograms of wood, 150 kilograms of metal, and 50 mechanical parts. To be honest, the math didn't quite add up. This slow speed and the 24-hour rule didn't seem to align. Even more terrifying was the thought of 10,000 people in 10,000 separate trains. Just how large would those platforms have to be? Amidst his confusion, he checked his personal profile, Conductor Lennon. His stamina was at 100, and while he had no active abilities, he possessed a unique talent called sublimation. He whispered the word to himself. The system explained that he could consume stamina or spirit to purify anything, regardless of its level or category. It was a truly limitless power. On his starter workbench sat a bottle of water, a piece of bread, and a low-quality knife. He tentatively reached out with his mind to test his new gift. Lennon whispered the word sublimation in his mind, and an invisible force swept over the knife as his stamina instantly dropped from 100 to 90. The small blade transformed into a razor-sharp dagger, its edge humming with power. It seemed his talent truly could upgrade anything, a realization that left him stunned. He felt a surge of excitement, wondering if even the train itself could be sublimated, since the system claimed everything was fair game. He walked to the control console, placed his hand on the device, and focused on the thought of sublimation. Immediately, his stamina began to plummet. As his energy dropped from 90 to 30, he collapsed to the floor. Before his eyes, the train flickered with light as the upgrade process completed. Now at level 2, the materials required for the next stage increased significantly, but new upgrade options appeared, and the train's speed doubled to 40 kilometers per hour. He realized he could continue to sublimate, but his stamina was far too low. His spirit seemed to be his only remaining lifeline, though he didn't dare risk it just yet. The upgrade menu displayed blueprints and special module cards. However, he didn't have a single train coin to his name, and while the blueprints were free to claim, the material requirements were terrifyingly high. To be honest, getting his hands on them right now seemed almost impossible. But this was only the beginning. His heart raced as he looked at the resources needed for the basic blueprints, which were currently nowhere to be found. He worried that if he sublimated the blueprints, the materials might become even harder to find, making them impossible to build. He decided to put them away for now. Suddenly, a diamond-shaped card surrounded by pale blue particles floated into his palm. It was a special module card. The description was frighteningly simple. Activate it to receive a special module. One would only know how powerful it truly was after using it. A thought crossed his mind. Could this card be sublimated as well? Even though upgrading the train had drained a massive amount of his energy, the water and bread had miraculously restored his stamina to 50 points. He figured it was worth a try. He whispered the command under his breath, and that invisible power surged once more. The card instantly began to emit countless blue particles. Imagine if someone were looking at the sky right now. They would see Lin-An's train racing through the wasteland like a comet with a blue tail. He frowned, staring intently as the light from the card slowly began to fade. The invisible force dissipated, leaving his body feeling light. His stamina sat at 20, while his spirit remained at 60. Despite his mental exhaustion, the sublimation was a success. He now held an exclusive special module card. The cost was steep, draining 30 points of stamina and 40 points of spirit, 70 in total, which was quite a lot for a single upgrade. He wondered what mental exhaustion actually meant, as he didn't feel much of anything while lying on the floor, staring at the card. Brushing the doubt aside, he figured it was just a trick of the mind. His physical fatigue was simply masking any spiritual weariness. He offered a quick prayer to any god or emperor who might be listening. Not that it mattered, but in this wasteland, every little bit of luck helped. As he activated the exclusive module card, a stream of blue light enveloped his body, and the system's holographic screen flickered into life before him. The system announced the successful use of the card, congratulating him on obtaining the conductor's exclusive module, the fork in the road. This unique module ensured that his path would always present a second choice, with each option leading to a vastly different destiny. Just as he began to study the details, the overhead broadcast suddenly crackled to life, telling everyone to sit down and hold on tight. The train was approaching its first station, and the voice wished them luck. He was surprised to realize an entire hour had already passed. He hadn't noticed the time at all, but a glance at the clock showed only 1 minute remained before arrival as a second screen popped up. The fork in the road had activated, presenting him with 2 choices for the upcoming stop: Station 1, the marshlands, or Station 2, the armory. This was the power of his new module in action. He had to make a decision quickly, or the system would assign a destination at random. He chose the armory, recalling the old wisdom that while neighbors might stockpile food, it was far better to stockpile weapons in a world like this. With the selection confirmed, the system warned him to brace himself as the train prepared to pull into its first destination, the armory. A deafening roar filled the air as the space ahead began to twist and warp, looking very much like a gaping, distorted maw in reality. The whistle shrieked as the train plunged through the rift, and the surrounding environment shifted instantly as they left the wasteland behind. They had arrived at the armory station, and a countdown timer appeared on the screen, giving him exactly 29 minutes and 59 seconds. The system wished him luck once more, noting there were no immediate dangers as the train's speed began to gradually decrease. Standing before the door, Lennon took a deep breath, gripped his sublimated dagger tightly, and finally pressed the button to open the way. Outside, a deathly silence reigned in the pitch black, where he could just make out a massive building in the distance under a sky with no sun or moon. Despite the darkness, the buildings remained visible in this strange space-time rift, a truly mind-boggling phenomenon that explained how all trains arrived and departed simultaneously. He walked less than 10 steps from the train and pried open the heavy, sealed doors, only to be hit by a wave of stagnant, ancient air. Inside, we see rows of neatly stacked wooden crates smelling of rot. Lennon used his dagger to snap the iron lock off the first one. Buried halfway in the wood shavings were 2 bolt-action rifles, low-grade marksman weapons, but weapons nonetheless. Each rifle came with 20 rounds of low-grade ammunition, providing him with 40 shots in total, a decent start, all things considered. The armory held many more crates of potential treasures, so he began the grueling task of hauling the supplies back to the train. After several trips, his initial excitement was fading as his stamina plummeted to a mere 15 points. His body had reached its physical limit after so much sublimation, yet strangely, his spirit had climbed to 70 points. Realizing he couldn't move much more in the remaining 3 hours without an energy refill, he decided to stop hauling and explore the armory instead. On a shelf in a side room, he discovered several sealed iron boxes that looked remarkably like the military rations he'd seen in old videos. Driven by curiosity, we follow him as he approached the crates, noting that the printed markings had faded into blurry, square shapes. Could it really be? He swallowed hard, his anticipation growing as he pried open the corner of the first iron box. Inside were compressed biscuits stacked as neatly as gold bars, smelling faintly of milk and fermented yeast. It really was food. Ignoring any expiration dates, he stuffed a piece into his mouth. It would have been perfect with water, but his hunger was finally addressed. Still wanting more, he found 4 iron boxes containing 80 biscuits in total, enough to keep him fed for half a month. Nearby were sealed barrels of water, though they smelled too strange to drink. Nevertheless, he wasn't about to leave them behind. He hauled them back to the train, noting that the armory felt like a semi-sealed tomb, thick with the stench of rot and damp wood. The further he ventured past the collapsed shelves and debris, the more the foul odor of decay seemed to press in on him. 2 hours passed, yielding only 42 small-caliber rounds. Most of the other guns were rusted beyond repair and fit only for scrap. He also gathered some timber and iron parts. While he could upgrade the train through sublimation, having extra raw materials never hurt. He realized these supplies could be traded later. Glancing at the countdown, he saw 30 minutes left before departure, just enough time for 1 or 2 more trips. With time for one last run, the train car was already becoming quite cluttered, making the organization of that first ordinary carriage his top priority. He had gathered plenty of mechanical parts and wood, but metal was still scarce, leaving him unable to build anything new as he returned to the armory. Lennon headed straight for the unexplored back rooms. The old living quarters yielded nothing at first, until he reached the very last door. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed beneath his feet, the unmistakable sound of bones snapping, and he looked down to see what he had done. He had stepped right through a skeleton's leg bone. He offered a quick apology to the brother he'd disturbed, though he wasn't particularly frightened anymore. Having seen enough horror movie scenarios lately, he prepared to turn away, but then his eye caught a paper bag hidden beneath the remains. The bag was perfectly intact and free of dust, which was strange, considering how everything else in this rotting environment had decayed long ago. Filled with suspicion, he pulled the folder out but didn't open it immediately, choosing instead to hurry back to the safety of the train car. The control system had an identification function. If this was a trap, the system would surely provide a warning before he opened it. To his absolute shock, the system identified this thin, wafer-like folder as a level 1 treasure chest, a rare find indeed. He couldn't hide his joy, even offering a silent thanks to the Bone brother back in the room, promising to give him a proper burial later. Just as he was about to open it, he paused. He wondered if even a treasure chest like this could be improved through sublimation. The thought took hold of him, so he checked his status. His stamina sat at 30, while his spirit remained high at 80. Since the bag was so small, he figured the spiritual cost wouldn't be too high, and those compressed biscuits had already helped restore some energy. In this unusual world, food seemed to restore stamina with remarkable speed, a small mercy, all things considered. Once a man starts convincing himself, the decision is already made. He silently triggered the sublimation, watching his stats begin to drain. His spirit points plummeted below 50, sending him into a state of deep self-doubt as he collapsed onto the floor of the carriage. He lay there motionless, like a fish out of water, staring at the swaying lamp above for a long time before finally managing to sit up. His stamina had dropped to 20 and his spirit to 50. It seemed the process was more taxing than he had initially anticipated. Lennon scratched his head, feeling physically exhausted but sensing none of that supposed self-doubt. He simply shook it off and decided to keep going. We see him observing the folder in his hand, which hadn't changed in appearance, though it had successfully upgraded from a level 1 to a level 2 treasure chest. It had cost him at least 40 points of stamina and spirit, far more than he imagined, but the level 2 chest was finally ready. It seemed he couldn't sublimate it further. Perhaps items can only be upgraded once, or there are special rules he doesn't know yet, but he didn't dwell on it. He decided to open it first, rubbing his hands together in anticipation as he pulled the folder open to reveal the contents of the level 2 chest. He obtained 4 train coins, a Colt M1911 pistol, and a level 2 blueprint for an external trash collector. So, this is how one earns train coins. 4 of them, just like that. A discovery that certainly made the effort feel worthwhile. He opened the train's detail menu and found several new options. He spent 3 coins to buy a level 1 water reservoir blueprint and an extra hour of docking time. With only 1 coin left, he hoped the next station might provide enough resources to finally upgrade his equipment. The departure countdown reset to 1 hour and 15 minutes. He then turned his attention back to his prize, the Colt M1911. This pistol was clearly on another level compared to the ordinary guns in the armory, even though all firearms in this world seemed to use the same ammunition. He loaded a level 1 magazine and aimed the muzzle at a wooden crate outside the train, testing his new acquisition. He pulled the trigger, and the crate shattered instantly. The sheer power was staggering, leaving his hand feeling slightly numb from the recoil. He rubbed his aching palm, unable to hide his surprise. Despite using the same ammo as the armory guns, this weapon was twice as powerful. He briefly wondered what would happen if he sublimated the gun itself, but he quickly shook that dangerous thought away. His stamina and spirit were at their limits. He would have to wait for them to recover before attempting any more upgrades. After putting the pistol away, he used the control system to examine his 2 new blueprints, starting with the level 1 water reservoir. It could keep water fresh for days without evaporation, but it required 10 kilograms of metal and 20 mechanical parts. The external trash collector was even more ambitious, designed to automatically gather station scrap, though it required 30 kilograms of metal. It also needed 100 mechanical parts, with an option for a special modification using 300 parts to enable automatic dismantling. It seemed he could finally build the recycling equipment. By his own estimation, he had 210 kilograms of wood on hand. With 60 kilograms of metal and 220 mechanical parts, he realized he finally had enough resources to craft both items. He decided to set aside the first carriage for now. Since he had extra docking time, there was no reason to rush into things. With 1 hour left on the countdown, we see him opening the trading platform, which operated under a rather peculiar set of rules. A conductor cannot list items while at a station. They can only sell once they've departed, likely to prevent people from bypassing storage limits. However, buying items had no such restrictions, meaning he could still shop while his train was docked at the platform. The rule against selling while docked had an obvious flaw. It didn't stop private trades or prevent anyone from buying up local supplies. It was almost as if the system were hinting that the rules could be bent, an observation Lin and didn't dwell on for long. He had one goal, trading for metal. As for what he would offer in return, his gaze drifted toward his low-level rifles and compressed biscuits. In a world like this, what people crave most is a sense of security, and weapons and food are the ultimate symbols of safety. He refreshed the platform repeatedly, but while some had listed metal, the quantities were small and the prices were, frankly, quite ridiculous. It seemed everyone was just testing the waters. He then opened the chat room, where other conductors had already left their first stations. The chat was a blur of messages as people compared notes, with one user asking how everyone's first harvest had turned out. One person complained that their trash station yielded nothing but old tires, though another pointed out that tires could be dismantled for rubber. Another conductor lamented that their first stop was just a grassy field with nothing but dirt, which, to be honest, sounds rather peaceful. Others argued that black soil was actually valuable for growing food, though the original poster wondered if you could actually eat the dirt itself. The debate continued about whether the tiny space in a train's cabin was even enough to grow vegetables, which is a fair point. Suddenly, someone asked for mechanical parts in exchange for a blueprint, causing a stir in the chat as the details were posted. It was a blueprint for a low-level mechanical fishing rod with an auto-fishing feature, requiring 20 mechanical parts and 1 kilogram of metal. The chat erupted in envy over the man's luck, though as we know, a screenshot of a blueprint is useless without the actual item. The chat was filled with desperate offers, like one person claiming they had 20 mechanical parts and would trade the blueprint for just bread and water. Others were quick to scoff, pointing out that trading parts for bread and water was a bit of a stretch. Half a loaf would be more than enough. One conductor admitted they only had 15 parts and didn't see the big deal about a fishing rod, especially since the first station's harvest was so meager. It seemed few people had found much of value. Some were even begging for water to avoid dying of thirst, having found nothing in their supply crates. The conversation grew heated as people complained about those who kept information to themselves, calling the lack of sharing shameful when everyone was just trying their best to survive. Some even began condemning the person who bragged about their loot, imagining a greedy face on the other side of the screen. That person didn't hold out for long and eventually shared a screenshot of their system, showing the contents of a level 1 supply chest. It contained 2 train wall reinforcements and a level 1 blueprint for a thermal pad, which was a decent haul for a basic chest. We learned that a level 1 chest gives 2 wall pieces, while level 2 gives 4, and level 3 likely gives 6, making the first level look quite meager. Still, medicine is a treasure in this world, and those wall reinforcements were vital. As Lennon pondered this, a new message caught his eye. A user named Li Shaoxing asked if anyone needed metal, stating he had a supply ready for trade. He was prioritizing weapons in exchange, which suggested to Lin and that this man's survival skills were actually quite decent. Compared to those who couldn't even fill their stomachs, Lennon preferred dealing with someone like Li Shaoxing, so he decided to reach out immediately. He contacted him, and soon a private message popped up from Li Shaoxing, asking if he was indeed looking to trade for metal. The man asked how much Lennon had and how much he needed. He was cautious, but his words suggested he had quite a lot of metal on hand. Lennon asked if he could provide 150 kilograms, a request that made the chat interface feel suddenly very heavy. Li Shaoxing rubbed his eyes and stared at the message, clearly in disbelief at the mention of 150 kilograms. That was the exact amount needed for a first-level train upgrade. He wondered what kind of confidence this person had to ask for so much at once. After hesitating for a moment, Li Shaoxing replied that he could provide it, but he wanted to know what Lennon was offering in exchange. Lennon used the system to snap a photo of a low-level rifle and send it over, knowing a gun was the ultimate bargaining chip. Lennon offered 20 bullets for the 150 kilograms of metal, a proposal that left Li Shaoxing stunned by the fact that someone actually had a gun. The man agreed to trade, but he complained that the price was daylight robbery, claiming a single gun couldn't possibly be worth that much metal. Lennon toyed with a bullet, having fully expected this reaction. However, as the only seller on the market, he knew he could set whatever price he desired. He reminded the man that in a world like this, a gun is life itself, especially since no one knows what dangers await at the next station. Deep down, Li Shaoxing knew he was right. He had been lucky at his first station, finding over 300 kilograms of metal and a chest. But compared to the security of a firearm, raw metal felt insignificant, so he desperately asked if there was any room for negotiation. Lennon simply rubbed his chin and narrowed his eyes at the screen, sensing that Li Shaoxing's hunger for the weapon was far greater than his hesitation. Since the man was clearly hooked, Lennon saw no harm in squeezing him for every bit of value. Across the screen, Li Shaoxing stared at the photo and swallowed hard. The man tried one last time, asking if 100 kilograms would suffice, but Lennon just kept playing with his bullet and asked what he thought. Li Shaoxing grit his teeth and asked for a moment to think, to which Lennon coolly replied that he was in no rush since he was quite busy. Most people had already left their stations, and with the trains being so cramped, chatting online was the only way to pass the time. Li Shaoxing had no way of knowing that Lennon was still at the first station, nor could he guess that his goal wasn't just a simple upgrade, but building a whole new carriage. Finally, Li Shaoxing took a deep breath, his expression hardening as he made his decision to accept the trade. He couldn't help but ask what Lennon needed so much metal for. Was it for a train upgrade, or did he have a blueprint to mass-produce these guns? He assured Lin and he wasn't like the loudmouths in the public chat, and that if they kept trading, he would be a very valuable partner to have. The man boasted that he would upgrade his train to level 2 within 3 stations, and could even help promote Lin and's weapons to others. Lennon wondered where such confidence came from, though he suspected Li Shaoxing might have a special talent of his own. Not that it mattered to him, of course. While the man considered a level 2 upgrade within 3 stations a feat of strength, Lennon looked at his own progress. He He had already reached level 2 before even finishing the first station, so he simply told the man to proceed with the trade. Following the system's guidance, he placed the low-level rifle and the 20 bullets into the designated empty space to finalize their deal. A virtual light swept across the rifle and bullets, and as they vanished, they were replaced by a neat stack of 150 kilograms of metal. It was remarkably convenient, and Lin didn't worry about Li Shaoxing playing tricks, as the system ensured a perfectly fair exchange. Errors were impossible. Looking at the resources now in his hands, his eyes lit up as he pulled out the low-level carriage blueprint. He placed it on the processing table, and a semi-transparent light rose from the blueprint, showing the requirements for the new carriage. It called for 100 kilograms of wood, 150 kilograms of metal, and 60 mechanical parts. Without a moment's hesitation, he clicked Confirm, and instantly, the required materials vanished into thin air from inside the train. Immediately after, we see the materials above the rear of the train being pulled and reorganized by a mysterious force. They condensed into a carriage that dropped from the sky, landing steadily on the tracks and sliding smoothly to attach behind the engine. The construction was a success, though the system noted it could still be upgraded with glass and fiber, as the interior was currently bare. The carriage had no special functions yet, and, rather oddly, it didn't even have an external door. One could only enter through the engine room, but the internal space was quite large, 10 meters long and about the height of a man. It was spacious and bright, with window frames, but no glass yet. He figured he would have to add that later to keep the wind out. At last, he wouldn't have to cram everything into the engine room. He nodded with satisfaction, feeling like a true conductor now. He checked his physical and mental stamina, deciding not to push for further upgrades just yet as he moved his resources into the new space. He glanced at the departure countdown. With dozens of minutes left, he had plenty of time to finish moving his belongings. As the countdown finally hit 0, the stationary train began to groan and slowly lurch forward into motion. Suddenly, the space in front of the engine distorted, and in the blink of an eye, the train passed through a ripple to return to the dark, endless wasteland. But before he could even catch his breath, a cold, mechanical broadcast voice echoed through every carriage with a sharp chime. It announced that all conductors had left the platform, congratulating the 98,922 survivors who had safely cleared the first station. They had now officially left the newbie safety period, and from the second station onward, the safety of the trains would no longer be guaranteed. The train was safely docked, but little did we know, these words would trigger a massive wave of shock throughout the chat room. Weren't they supposed to leave the platform an hour ago? People were baffled that someone had stayed at the first station for extra time. Enraged, some began shouting about cheaters, while others deeply regretted not getting off at the first station to search for treasure. At this moment, they had no idea that the cheater they were cursing was actually quite comfortable, sitting on the floor and counting his loot. Before Lin lay 49 low-level marksman rifles, a sight that would make any survivor green with envy. In addition to 1,100 rounds of ammunition, he had 150 kilograms of wood and over 100 kilograms of metal. He even had 162 mechanical parts, not to mention the crowbar and shovel he'd swiped from the armory. He had successfully pocketed it all, so he pulled out a blueprint and invested 40 kilograms of metal and his mechanical parts into the system. He decided to place the reservoir inside the carriage, while the collector would be mounted on the left exterior side. A second later, a metal pool with pulleys appeared out of thin air. This low-level reservoir was quite a piece of engineering. It could hold a staggering 1,000 kilograms of water, and better yet, it came with a built-in, non-removable isolation layer. This allowed him to perfectly separate sewage from clean water, so he poured the 50 kilograms of dirty water from the armory right in. However, looking at the empty clean water section, he couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed that he lacked a purification device. But he wasn't worried at all. He simply opened the chat room and prepared to send out his first major announcement. Then came a major piece of news. Acquiring blueprints for water glass fiber and other resources would, as it turns out, be highly beneficial. Interested parties were told to message him privately to trade for firearms and food, and the channel went silent the moment the message appeared. Then, the comments began to pour out like a pack of wild dogs, everyone losing their minds over the mention of guns. People were asking if they were real guns, lamenting that they had found nothing at the first station while this man had an arsenal. Some even tried to charm him with empty promises, but Lin didn't give these online beggars a second glance. Instead, he turned his attention back to the roof of the car to inspect the black iron and the recovery device he had just installed. Once everything was set, Lin leisurely opened his private messages, which were so flooded they were nearly crashing the interface. He saw countless messages from people like Zhao Ke begging to be his lackey, and others like Lin Xiaopeng, who tried to morally blackmail him into surrendering his weapons. With a cold sneer, he promptly blocked them all in one clean sweep. But just then, a very peculiar message caught his eye. It was an offer of 20 kilograms of lake water, though no container was provided, sent by a survivor named Shengguan Ingxiu. Lin frowned slightly, thinking that 20 kilograms was far too little, especially since lake water doesn't necessarily mean it's safe to drink. He demanded more to make the deal worth it, and to his surprise, the other party only hesitated for a moment before asking for his price. He asked for 100 kilograms, knowing full well that in these early, desperate days of survival, even unpurified water is worth 100 times more than scrap metal. The other end of the chat fell into a brief, dead silence, and just as he thought the deal had fallen through, the screen flashed again. The mysterious survivor agreed, but requested extra ammunition in exchange for even more water. To be honest, this was becoming quite the lucrative trade. Lin An's eyes widened in disbelief, wondering where on earth this woman had managed to find such a vast quantity of water. More importantly, since the trading platform was closed during the 3-hour stop at the first station, how had she managed to store it all? Despite his lingering doubts, he wasn't about to let such a golden opportunity slip through his fingers, so he finalized the trade. As the water splashed down, his reservoir was suddenly filled with clear lake water, a sight that made him instinctively swallow hard. He had to suppress the urge to drink it immediately, knowing that drinking unpurified lake water would be a one-way ticket to a painful end. Once the transaction was complete, Shangwan Ingshu sent a friend request, asking if they could continue to trade in the future. Faced with such a high-quality client who spoke little but acted decisively, he clicked accept without a second thought. Compared to the useless beggars who only made empty promises, a reliable partner like this was a literal oasis in the desert. Next, he sold off several more rifles and rounds of ammo, and the fiber and glass he received in return gave his carriage an epic upgrade. The leaky iron box he called home was suddenly fitted with airtight windows, and he looked down at his remaining 21 rifles with satisfaction. He stretched lazily, knowing that while these low-level weapons would eventually lose their value, for now, his hoarding instincts had paid off handsomely. Knowing that reckless behavior is never the answer, Lennon happily pulled out the bread and mineral water he'd traded for to enjoy his first proper meal. After eating and drinking his fill, he curled up in a relatively warm corner of the locomotive, deciding that the apocalypse could wait for a while. All he wanted now was a deep, dark sleep while the train continued its frantic race across the endless, desolate wasteland. His eyes gradually drifted shut, but in the dead of night, a bone-chilling cold suddenly jolted him awake. Rubbing his eyes, he sat up and instinctively looked out the window, where the wasteland remained deathly silent and shrouded in mystery. He looked up abruptly to see a massive, bright moon hanging high overhead, casting a cold light that seemed to wrap the world in loneliness. It was 3:37 in the morning, while the rest of the survival world was still lost in a deathly silence. Lin was already wide awake. With his physical strength mostly restored, he decided it was finally time to give his trump card a significant power boost. He pulled out the pitch-black Colt M1911, which, to be honest, looked more like a work of art than a mere weapon. Taking a deep breath, he whispered the word sublimate in his mind, and in an instant, the process began. He felt his stamina draining away at a frantic pace as the black gun barrel was suddenly covered in faint, glowing patterns. The frame of the gun grew noticeably wider, becoming a level 3 blacklight enchanted pistol with a massive jump in raw power. It could even consume his stamina to convert standard bullets into armor-piercing rounds, a feature he was eager to test on some scrap metal. He pulled the trigger, and with a deafening roar and a flash of fire, the metal target was completely blown apart. This wasn't just a pistol anymore. It was more like a portable cannon, and though each armor-piercing round cost 2 stamina points, it was worth it. Next, he placed his hand on the first carriage to sublimate it, expecting it to drain his mental energy instead of his physical strength. To his surprise, it only cost him 25 points of stamina, and the transformation happened almost instantly. The once bone-chilling carriage was suddenly filled with a warmth like a spring breeze, now upgraded to a level 2 constant temperature carriage. With the interior fixed at a perfect 22 degrees Celsius, he felt ready for whatever unknown challenges the next day might bring. He spread out a blanket to sleep, knowing that total exhaustion is often the best cure for insomnia, and waited to open his eyes again. It was already 10:27 in the morning, and with the second station arrival looming, time was running out for our survivor. His private message interface had long since been bombarded into a wasteland of notifications, but amidst the clutter, a man named Lu Zhou appeared. This fellow actually wanted to trade a blueprint for a gun, a level 1 train seat blueprint, which, despite being just a chair, was quite valuable. After all, a blueprint meant infinite production, so Lin enclosed the deal for just 1 rifle and 10 bullets. To his surprise, Lu Zhou was overwhelmed. The man was moved to tears, claiming that without this weapon, he would surely die at the next station. One has to wonder if he knew something. Did he have some sort of foresight? Well, everyone has their secrets. Lennon sat on his newly crafted black swivel chair, and just like that, things felt different. A long-lost sense of civilization washed over him. With only half an hour left on the countdown, he decided to make one final move with 15 rifles. Using the same method as before, he sublimated his last rifle into a shimmering, gold-trimmed, exquisite marksman rifle. A true beauty, to be honest. Its power had doubled, though its potential was now spent. By this time, Lennon felt his physical and mental energy had fully returned to him. With a legendary long gun and a short one in hand, he watched as the familiar light screen suddenly flickered to life before his eyes. It was a crossroads of destiny. To the left lay a level 2 hunting station, a goblin camp. To the right, a level 3 collection station. This was the White Forest. For the first time, level ratings appeared, clearly marking one path for slaughter and the other for treasure hunting. He didn't hesitate for a single second, immediately locking his sights on the White Forest. It wasn't just the higher level that drew him in. The name itself suggested a place hiding endless resources. Spatial fluctuations swallowed the train once more, and a grayish-white light filled his vision. Looking out the window, we see a vast, pale forest stretching toward the horizon. This was the White Forest Station, their home for the next few hours. The system allowed for a 4-hour stay and labeled the danger level as low. Naturally, Lennon reached for the blacklight pistol at his waist. He took a deep breath. In a godforsaken place like this, even the word low was relative, and he wasn't about to take any unnecessary chances. Even if it was just a blade of grass, he intended to show it exactly what an armor-piercing round could do. Armed with both guns, he opened the door. The moment he stepped out of the carriage, the entire world fell into a deathly silence, leaving only the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. The surrounding trees were a ghostly gray, looking as though their life force had been drained away. Despite the low-danger warning, something felt off. This eerie silence was far more bone-chilling than any roar could ever be. Suppressing the tremor deep in his soul, Lennon followed a narrow path. As he ventured deeper, he suddenly discovered a grove of trees at the end of the road, their branches heavy with strange, white fruit. He wondered if this was the so-called collection station. Driven by curiosity, he plucked a single fruit and brought it close to catch its scent. Instantly, a fragrance, sweet yet laced with a sharp bitterness, rushed to his head, sparking an inexplicably intense craving within him. He felt a desperate urge to devour it right then and there. But just as he was about to take a bite, an unprecedented sense of crisis struck. By pure reflex, he hurled the fruit away. A second later, he realized with a shock that his mental state was in a freefall. Just a single sniff had caused his sanity to plummet from a full bar down to 72. To be honest, that was a terrifyingly close call. Clearly, these were the precious collectibles of this station. Knowing that greed often leads to ruin, he decided to be much more cautious. He tore a piece of cloth to cover his nose and mouth before beginning to harvest the fruit like a man possessed. The forest remained deathly still. We see only the silhouette of our hard-working farmer darting through the trees until his backpack was stuffed to the very brim. He hurried back to the train, eager to feed one of the fruits into the identification system. It was a level 3 white forest fruit. Unprocessed, it releases hallucinogenic aromas that drain sanity. Eating it raw would permanently reduce one's maximum mental capacity. The processing method was simple: soak in cold water for 5 minutes. It turns out this little snack was actually a potent mental poison. No wonder he had nearly lost his mind. With a lingering fear, he quickly dumped all the fruit into the water. 5 minutes later, the change began. The grayish-white fruits transformed, taking on a translucent glow and an inviting aroma. He picked one up and took a bold bite. An explosion of extreme sweetness filled his mouth, a flavor that made bread and biscuits seem like cardboard. Instantly, his spirits were lifted. With time running out, he rushed back out of the train to make one last haul. However, he noticed something unexpected near the carriage. The trash recycling device he had installed earlier, that odd little machine, was moving with surprising efficiency between the forest and the train. It was tirelessly gathering fallen leaves. He had originally thought the device was useless, but here it was, working silently in the background. And who could blame him for underestimating it? After several more trips back and forth, his backpack was full once again. His backpack was stuffed to the limit once again, and with the countdown ticking away at just 32 seconds, Lennon prepared to depart. He returned fully loaded, having harvested over 100 pounds of white forest fruit. He sat back, contentedly snacking on the translucent treats. With a moment of peace at last, he decided to open the chat room to see how the rest of the world was faring. In just a few short hours, over 1,000 people had vanished forever, and that grim number was still climbing steadily. The chat was a chorus of agony. Some had drunk tainted water and were suffering, while others had been gored by wild buffalo. Some were even desperate enough to trade scavenger vulture meat for a sip of water. Watching these pleas, Lennon felt a sudden chill. He realized that his success today was entirely thanks to his unique Fate's Crossroads module. It was a sobering thought, really. This gift allowed him to bypass the horrific slaughterhouse stations. Just as his heart grew heavy with the weight of it, he remembered something. He recalled that little trash-collecting robot he'd dismissed as useless. Expecting nothing, he glanced at the screen and froze in shock. Several large words flashed before his eyes, making him bolt upright. Level 3 treasure chest available. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Deep down, he wondered if the fruit was giving him hallucinations. But there, amidst the pile of discarded junk, sat a grayish wooden box. It seemed to outshine everything else in the room. He had just finished calling this little robot a burden, and yet, here we are. Against all odds, the machine had scavenged a massive surprise from that eerie white forest. He gave its square head an appreciative pat. He immediately triggered an upgrade. Though the sudden drain on his stamina and spirit left him gasping for air, he didn't care. As the wooden box transformed into a level 4 treasure chest, his heart raced. With a creak, he held his breath and lifted the lid. 8 train coins shimmered in his palm, followed by a high-grade ceramic bulletproof vest and seeds for the white forest fruit trees. Even a new train paint job was added to his inventory, but his true joy came from the level 4 external sentry station he discovered. Without a second thought, he installed it on the front of the train. 5 rifles were instantly mounted, their red lights scanning the path. Within a 100-meter radius, any invisible or camouflaged threat would now be exposed. To be honest, the sense of security was intoxicating. As the final 3 minutes began, he hurriedly packed the local specialty fruit and the stones and leaves the robot had gathered. He tossed everything into the workshop, originally thinking it was just trash, only to discover those leaves could actually produce salt. The train surged forward with a powerful jolt, and the pale white forest outside the window vanished, replaced once again by the endless wilderness. As we see him collapse into his chair to stretch, his private chat interface suddenly begins to flash with frantic intensity. In this world of constant death, no one should have been able to trigger such a high-priority alert except for Shangguan Xue. He stared at the screen as that cold, distant woman sent a single message. Do you still need water? In a survival game where a single sip of clean water can spark a massacre, she followed up with something truly mind-boggling. She casually mentioned she had just finished taking a shower. Lennon nearly crushed the light screen in his hand upon reading that. His own reservoir held only a pathetic amount of water, yet this woman was apparently drowning in luxury. What do you need? He asked. He made it clear he had no more firearms to trade, suppressing his speechlessness as he typed out the reply. Shangguan Xue laid out her terms: 32 kilograms of wood, 50 kilograms of metal, and 40 mechanical parts. She assumed he would have these items. Hearing this exorbitant list, he raised an eyebrow. These were clearly materials for a train upgrade. He questioned how she was so sure he had them, and even if he did, why he wouldn't just use them for his own train. Shangguan Xue fell silent for a moment. She simply hated trouble, and she had calculated that he'd sold enough rifles to be rich in resources. Lennon couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. Her math was precise, but to be honest, she had only guessed half of it. He had actually sold over 40 rifles, not 20. Still, trading core resources for a bit of water didn't particularly interest him. But then, she suddenly sent over a screenshot of a level 1 water purification device. Now, that changed everything. The device could purify 1 kilogram of wastewater per hour. He never expected her to possess such a divine piece of technology. It explained her luxury. She could even recycle her own bathwater. Since she was offering the blueprint itself, he wouldn't be polite. The deal was struck. The moment the trade was finalized, we see him installing the device right next to the wastewater tank. But this was only the beginning. He immediately activated his unique sublimation ability, and a faint glow began to envelop the machine. A flash of light reveals the upgraded level 2 water purification device, now capable of purifying 3 kilograms of water per hour. It can even process seawater, effectively tripling its efficiency, which naturally left Lin and feeling quite satisfied with the trade. As we see him casually ask about her train upgrade options, he realizes her choices were far inferior to his own superior selections. She even had the nerve to ask if he wanted to buy water. Remembering it was filtered bathwater, his mouth twitched in pure disgust. After decisively ending the chat, he turns his attention to the real main event now that his train has reached level 2. He had actually been holding back one final ultimate option. While others struggled to find a single train coin, he is far ahead. With ample capital in hand, he spends 5 train coins to purchase the blueprint for the train burst acceleration device. Obtaining the blueprint was only the first step, as building it required a staggering 200 mechanical parts. He spent ages haggling in the trade zone, using 7 compressed biscuits until the complex mechanical device finally took shape. However, he soon discovered a rather frustrating limitation. Manufacturing the acceleration bullets would cost yet another train coin. With a weary sigh, he once again summons his physical and mental energy to attempt another sublimation on the machine. As the light fades, a red triple-speed acceleration device appears, not only tripling his speed but enhancing the bullet capacity. The daily usage limit surged to 5 times. Gritting his teeth, he spent 2 more coins to craft 2 silver-white bullets. Though the cost was painful enough to make him hesitate on a test fire, his confidence had never been higher. With everything settled, it was finally time to rest. By the following morning, his energy had completely returned to its peak. Humming a small tune, we see him walk to the end of the carriage to dig up that mysterious, unchanging seed from the soil. He decides to use sublimation again, hoping to accelerate its growth. As his strength drains, a blessed seed appears in his palm. This was now a blessed white forest fruit tree seed. In 9 days, it would produce a mysterious, empowered fruit every day. It seems his plan worked, as even the future fruit had been upgraded along with the seed itself through his unique power. Sensing the seed's potential was now fully tapped, he simply buried it and watered it before heading back for breakfast. As he passes by the trash recycling unit, Lennon suddenly stops and taps on the machine, which looks rather like an oversized matchbox. He remembers his earlier promise to grant it a sublimation. However, the moment he exerts his strength to activate the power, something feels wrong. His energy vanishes like a stone dropped into the ocean with no reaction at all, an unprecedented failure that leaves him frowning in confusion. Refusing to give up, he consumes 60 points of mental energy to force the activation, and finally, that familiar, comforting glow envelopes the device. The Matchbox transforms instantly into a GT-1 automatic treasure hunting robot, capable of locking onto treasure chests the moment the train arrives at a platform. Each deployment costs 1 train coin. As its camera-like eyes blink and lock onto him, a classic movie image flashes through his mind. He decides to name it Wally, but the little bot immediately enters sleep mode, making it clear that it won't wake up without a payment. It seems everything requires train coins now. Between the acceleration bullets and this upgraded robot, his resources are disappearing into a bottomless pit. To be honest, it's a bit of a gold sink, but then he realizes something crucial. Most people still have no idea what these coins are actually worth. He rushes back to the front of the train and opens the chat room, finding exactly what he expected, a chorus of complaints about the useless coins. Some users are even despairing, claiming they are down to eating dirt, which presents a perfect opportunity for our protagonist. He immediately lists a compressed biscuit and a bottle of water on the trade platform, setting the price at a single train coin. Shortly after the trade is posted, the noon bells chime, signaling that a literal fork in the road of destiny has appeared before him. On one side lies the Level 2 mission platform, Doomsday Town. On the other, a Level 2 hunting platform known as Goblin Village. Rather than risking his life against a horde of goblins, he decisively chooses the mission platform, which seems slightly more reliable. The train accelerates fiercely, and as the countdown hits 0, the world outside the windows undergoes a complete and terrifying transformation. A warning announces that Doomsday Town is extremely dangerous. As the brakes screech to a halt, he peers out at the new landscape. Unlike the silent darkness of previous stops, sunlight hangs high here, illuminating streets cluttered with wrecked cars and shocking bloodstains. Suppressing the pain of the cost, he slips a train coin into Wally's slot and watches the little fellow waddle out of the carriage. He can't help but worry the robot might become a chew toy for some lurking monster, so he quickly prepares to follow it outside. We see Lin An's gaze shift to a corpse not far away, where a piece of parchment on the man's backpack flutters in the wind. He is certain this is the key to the mission, so he immediately arms himself with his fine firearms and daggers. After putting on his sublimated high-grade bulletproof vest, he takes a deep breath and pushes open the carriage door. A wave of heat hits him, smelling of salt fish and rotting meat, enough to make anyone reconsider their life choices. He walks to the body and uses his gun barrel to flip over the tattered parchment, which tells the story of a great courier. The note begs whoever finds it to deliver the backpack's contents to the camp shop in the southeast corner of town. Lennon looks at the rotting corpse and thinks this poor soul had a rather dark sense of humor regarding his profession. He pulls open the backpack, but the contents are not at all what we might expect to find in a wasteland. Alongside a mechanical courier badge and a map, there is a perfectly preserved sealed box containing a happy birthday cake. He tucks the cake and badge away and begins to navigate through the ruins, following the red dot on the map. The path is littered with bleached bones and signs of carnage, looking very much like a scene from a nightmare. Suddenly, a sound echoes from up ahead, and he spots what looks like a stray dog frantically tearing at a corpse. But when the creature turns its head, Lennon feels a chill run down his spine. This is no living animal. It is a zombie dog with a rotting skull and an exposed heart, and it lets out a strange cry before lunging at him. In the heat of the moment, he draws his pistol and pulls the trigger repeatedly in a desperate burst of gunfire. Only one of the 5 shots hits its mark, and he knows the deafening noise will surely attract a horde of monsters. Not daring to linger, he runs at full speed, eventually reaching the location marked on the map after a slight detour. Strangely enough, the area around this building is eerily clean, without a single monster in sight. Just as he considers breaking down the tightly closed door, the rolling shutter suddenly creaks open a tiny crack. He instantly raises his rifle, aiming directly at the gap, only to hear a voice pleading for him not to shoot. A terrified, hoarse roar erupts from behind the door. Lennon, keeping his expression cold, steps closer and pulls out the metal badge. He asks if the man is the owner, explaining he's a courier finishing a fallen colleague's delivery. In this godforsaken wasteland, that title is a powerful shield. As the rolling shutter creaks upward, we see a middle-aged man with a messy, unshaven face peering out from the shadows. The man mutters with a dry laugh that these days, the only things wandering outside are monsters, madmen, and couriers. Lennon remains unmoved, keeping his gun barrel pressed firmly against the man's head as he prepares to enter the shop. He hands over the items and demands his reward. The older man stares at the cake, whispering that it should have arrived much sooner. The man turns away and, after a moment, slides a container through the gap in the door for Lin and to inspect. When he sees the contents, Lennon catches his breath. 3 train coins lie there, the universal currency of the platform worlds. But just as he reaches for this small fortune, a hand suddenly shoots out from the gap and grips his gun tightly. In that split second of danger, Lennon doesn't hesitate. He pulls the trigger without a moment's thought. With a sickening crack and a scream, a severed hand is blown away, and the rolling shutter is smashed open by a monstrous force. We finally see the creature's true face. It is a bloated, horrific nightmare that barely resembles a human being anymore. Only a small patch of skin on its face remains recognizable. It screams that it's too late. His daughter only wanted a piece of cake. The monster bellows in a hysterical rage, blaming useless couriers for being late before lunging forward to kill him. Suppressing his racing heart, Lennon raises his rifle and fires 3 consecutive shots directly at the approaching beast. To his horror, the upgraded rifle rounds don't even scratch the creature's skin. A massive fist swings toward him like a wrecking ball. The blow hits his chest with incredible force, sending him flying backward like a kite with a broken string. His stomach churns from the impact. To be honest, if not for that sublimated bulletproof vest, that single hit would have ended his journey. As the monster lunges again with a twisted laugh, Lennon quickly raises his other weapon to face the threat. The creature mocks him, claiming it doesn't fear bullets, but Lennon responds with a deafening, continuous burst of gunfire. Lennon lets out a cold laugh despite the searing pain, suggesting the creature take a closer look at its own body. The monster stares in disbelief at the clean, glowing holes now riddling its torso. Lennon, clutching his stomach, struggles to find his footing. In his hand, the black light enchanted pistol, which converts his own stamina into armor-piercing rounds, glows with a faint, eerie light. He limps over and presses the dark muzzle directly against the creature's head. It all makes sense now. The reason this area was so eerily deserted was that this territorial monster had cleared out every other living soul. Lennon takes a shaky breath, stepping past the remains. He retrieves the cake and the 3 train coins, tucking them away safely before moving further inside. We see him push open the ruined door, finding a shop that is unexpectedly clean and tidy, filled with silver crosses and specialized equipment. Silver arrows lie scattered on the counter, but it is a blood-stained diary on a corner table that truly catches our attention. The entry for March 1st mentions finding 3 coins in a severed train car outside of town. To be honest, his plan was simple enough. He heard the coins could summon a courier with delicacies, and he wanted to buy a cake for his sick daughter. By March 11th, everything changed. His daughter passed away, still asking what sweetness tasted like. He buried her in the backyard, terrified she might turn into a monster. The March 15th entry is chilling. He wonders why the courier hasn't arrived, desperate to see her again, if only he had that cake. The diary ends there. The remaining pages nothing but bloody tears and frantic scratches. It seems grief and madness finally took their toll. This grieving father eventually transformed into the very nightmare Lynn and just faced. Silently, Lennon walks to the backyard with the delivery. He places the long-overdue cake before the cold tombstone, marking the end of this grim assignment. Or so he thinks. A specific detail from the diary suddenly makes his skin crawl, the mention of a severed train engine outside of town. It suggests that a conductor might have died here long ago. We realize then that Lennon and his peers are not the first survivors to arrive. A wave of cold dread washes over him, though there is no one left in this desolate place to answer his mounting questions. Suppressing his shock, he quickly loots the silver crossbows and arrows from the shop before turning to leave this tragic scene. With only 35 hours left before the train departs, he begins the long trek back, which will be far more difficult than he imagined. The journey back is 100 times more difficult, as the entire town is now crawling with zombie dogs and mutated chickens. But what truly chills the blood is this eerie place, where not a single humanoid zombie can be seen. If the train upgrade hadn't granted him an extra hour, Lennon is certain he would have lost his life in that swarm of monsters. After finally managing a safe retreat to his carriage, he immediately pulls out the pile of loot to take inventory. To be honest, he needed a win after that ordeal. The mithril crossbows and ritual arrows could deal devastating blows to the vampire kin, but he knows his own marksmanship is far too poor to rely on them. And so he decisively recycles the useless scraps to gather 10 kilograms of mithril before consuming 55 points of stamina for the next step. He begins the process of sublimating the remaining mithril crosses. We see the result, a sanctuary mithril cross, capable of releasing holy light even in the deepest darkness. It is a beacon of purity in a world that has forgotten what light looks like. To his surprise, the water and biscuits he listed earlier were snapped up instantly. Toying with the shiny train coins in his hand, he feels a rare moment of satisfaction. While munching on some fruit, he leisurely checks the chat channel, only to see that the survival count has plummeted to 7,800 people. Over 2,000 souls have been left behind forever at this deadly third station. The chat area is a sea of wailing. Some were terrified by caves full of spiders. Others barely managed to survive using guns they purchased, while a few are busy praising a certain individual who seems to have taken the lead. Naturally, they take the opportunity to insult Lennon, calling him a short-sighted fool. But as he watches the drama unfold with cold indifference, a pinned message suddenly explodes across the entire channel. A user named Li Shaoxing announces he has completed the train upgrade and is officially founding an alliance. He urges anyone with train coins to join quickly, promising food and water to the first members. It is a classic move, really, a masterclass in empty-handed manipulation. In the next second, the chat channel falls into a state of absolute panic. It seems many realize they had just spent their only ticket to safety. One user cries out that they just used their only coin to buy water, begging the seller to refund them, which, as we can imagine, is a hopeless request. The channel is filled with desperate pleas for refunds, but Linen has no interest in such nonsense. His gaze is fixed entirely on a screenshot posted by Li Xiaoxing. The image clearly shows the train's upgrade options. Not only are there blueprints for basic carriages, but there are even more advanced survival tools listed. Items like automatic wooden fishing rods and life support rations have appeared. However, the most critical detail is the fourth option on the list. It is identical to his own, an option to increase the stopover time by 1 hour. This finally confirms the dark suspicion he has been harboring. He reflects that Li Xiaoxing's luck is actually quite good. If they ever reach a station with water, that fishing rod will be a god-tier tool. However, Linen isn't worried in the slightest. With his fate's fork in the road, providing a 30-minute warning, he knows that when he truly needs something, there will be more than enough time to buy it then and there. He gives Wally's iron head a frustrated little tap, annoyed that the mechanical companion led a whole swarm of monsters right back to their home base. Wally, of course, doesn't understand the scolding. He simply raises his mechanical arm and offers a candy box to Linen. We see him pause as he looks down. It turns out to be a genuine level 2 treasure chest. For the sake of such high-quality loot, he decides it isn't worth holding a grudge against the robot. By now, the swarm of monsters outside has closed in to within 100 meters. Anyone else would likely be paralyzed with fear, but Lin remains calm. He even takes a leisurely bite of a white pine nut, feeling secure because his train is now topped with a genuine level 4 defensive sentry tower. A second later, the red light atop the tower flares to life, instantly locking onto every target below. It is a terrifyingly efficient sight to behold. A row of dark gun barrels emerges from the shadows, and then, bang, 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 a dense hail of bullets begins to pour out into the night. The fire is like a reaper's scythe, with every shot precisely shattering the monster's vital points. In less than 10 seconds, the threat is neutralized. A dozen zombie dogs and humanoid monsters lie dead in pools of blood. Yet, as he stares at the corpses, Linen feels no joy whatsoever. Instead, his brow furrows deeper. There are still 8 full minutes until departure, and the gunfire from a level 4 tower is incredibly loud. It is several times louder than his own shots back at the shop, and as he feared, the piercing noise immediately alerts the entire town. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of monsters begin to surge from all directions like a rising tide, completely surrounding the train's path. However, the sentry tower's marksmanship is nothing short of divine. To be honest, it's the only thing keeping the tide at bay right now. The monsters at the front have their heads blown apart instantly. Even the oversized humanoid variants can't withstand more than 3 bullets. Just as the countdown hits 0, the train engine finally lets out a deafening roar. He ignores the crazed monsters chasing behind him and guns the engine. The train smashes through the void of space ahead, and in the blink of an eye, the apocalyptic town vanishes entirely from view. The silent, dead wilderness returns to his sight once more. But before he can even breathe a sigh of relief, something else catches his eye. The cold, mechanical chime of the system suddenly booms through the carriage, announcing that all survivors have now departed the 3rd station. Trading system restrictions are fully lifted, the newbie protection period has ended, and survival mode has officially begun. A warning follows: maintain night driving safety, as any survivor whose train speed drops below 30 km per hour will immediately enter a state of extreme danger. The broadcast ends with a chilling "good luck staying alive," a message that instantly sends the global chat channel into an unprecedented frenzy. People are panicking, wondering if monsters will now spawn in the wilderness too. One poor soul laments that he traded all his materials for food. Desperate cries for help fill the screen, with survivors begging brotherly for materials, claiming they've joined his alliance just to survive the night. As we watch the screen fill with desperate wails, a few clever individuals finally realize the truth of the situation. They call the others fools, pointing out that this broadcast was issued an hour late, meaning someone had already triggered the change. This realization hits the community like a physical blow. They wonder how anyone could have gathered enough resources to upgrade so early. After all, the trading system was just unlocked. It seems Li Xiaoxing's earlier boasting about being the first to upgrade was a bit premature. It appears a true top-tier expert has been hiding in the shadows, far surpassing Li Xiaoxing's supposed achievements. After only 3 stations, Lin has secured rewards that others wouldn't even dare to dream of. While everyone else is worrying about where they'll sleep, he has managed to acquire an entire special carriage for free. He owes this windfall to Wally, the dirty little mechanical soldier. On the light screen, the grade 1 kill rating begins to flicker. The hidden mission Town Liberator has rewarded him with a carriage exchange voucher, a perfect solution for his cramped living quarters. Without a moment's hesitation, he invokes his sublimation ability. In an instant, the ordinary voucher is transformed. It becomes a special carriage exchange voucher. He chooses to use it immediately, and we see the ticket burst into flames in midair. A massive new carriage drops precisely onto the tracks, connecting perfectly with the train. Inside, 48 storage cabinets line the walls. Each unit can store an infinite amount of a single item, finally liberating the cramped space within the train. But for Lennon, this is still not enough. He grits his teeth and heads to the end of the second carriage to continue his upgrades. As he activates the skill, his physical and mental energy are instantly drained, a massive 50-point cost that leaves him utterly exhausted. And yet, looking at the light screen before him, Lennon can't help but feel a surge of triumph at the sight of his level 3 storage carriage. Not only does it offer more space, but items stored here will never decay or break, and most impressively, it features 3 special units. These units function as a portable space, allowing him to access his items from anywhere. He immediately tests it with a few white forest fruits. Returning to the front of the train, he simply thinks of the fruit, and a fresh, juicy specimen appears instantly in his hand. This sublimation was worth every bit of effort. Next, he pulls out the level 2 treasure chest that Wally brought back and calculates his remaining points. He takes a deep breath and chooses to sublimate the chest, but in the very next second, his stamina and mental energy plummet. Both drop to a dangerous 20 points as warning alerts flood his vision, and a wave of physical collapse and mental fog washes over him. Gasping for air, he forces his heavy eyelids open to see the now level 3 treasure chest reveal 6 train arms. Inside, he also finds a refined arrow that deals triple damage to zombies, 3 vials of virus serum, and a windproof lighter. With these 6 new pieces, he now holds 10 train arms in total, undoubtedly making him the most well-equipped person in the entire sector. He intends to claim every upgrade available, but with only 10 points of stamina left, he realizes he must sleep immediately. He has no idea, of course, that while he drifts into a deep slumber, the chat room has completely descended into chaos. Everyone is frantically trying to buy upgrade materials, driven by the broadcast warning that they must maintain 30 kilometers per hour to survive. Soon, someone discovers that upgrading the wheels alone can just barely reach that required speed, and the word spreads like wildfire. Suddenly, metal and mechanical parts have become the ultimate lifeline for the desperate survivors. Meanwhile, Li Xiaosheng, the man so vocal about forming an alliance, looks absolutely miserable as he stares at his screen. Despite his resource radar talent, it took him 3 full stations to gather his materials. He simply cannot fathom who could be faster than him. Suddenly, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing across the wilderness jolts Lin awake from his much-needed rest. He opens his tired eyes and looks out the window, where beneath the night sky, dozens of glowing red eyes are staring back at him. His train is racing forward, pursued by a pack of crescent wolves moving at 25 kilometers per hour, a terrifying sight that wakes him instantly. Fortunately, our protagonist's level 2 train reaches 40 kilometers per hour, so there is no need to worry about being caught. He splashes his face with cold water. The clock shows it is exactly 1 in the morning. He casually opens the chat room, but in the next second, his pupils contract in shock. The number of survivors has plummeted to just over 4,000. He clearly remembers that during the day, there were nearly 8,000 people left. This means that in the few short hours while he slept, nearly 4,000 people died miserable deaths in the wilderness. A chill instantly crawls up his spine. The dangers of the night are far more terrifying than the stations. Those with insufficient speed are already gone. They have become nothing more than a midnight snack for those monsters. Just then, the notification sound for a private message suddenly rings out. It is Shang Wanningshua. She asks if he is still alive and if he has any bullets for sale, as she just woke up and needs supplies. He refuses her immediately. With his warning system active, his ammunition consumption has skyrocketed, and he cannot afford to be generous. He fired over 70 rounds just finishing the 3rd station. Now he only has 300 left, making it impossible to sell any. When she asks if he lacks a blueprint for bullets, he confirms he doesn't have one. She says goodbye, a woman of few words, as always. Lin never expected that after a brief rest, his maximum mental energy would mysteriously surge to a new height. Looking at his mental value of 110 points, he decides that since he can't explain the cause, he might as well do something big. He stands up abruptly and touches the control platform. It is time. He decides to force an upgrade to become the first level 3 train in the sector. An invisible force instantly envelopes the entire carriage. His stamina and mental energy begin to drain away like a bursting flood. After pouring 90 points into the process, a dazzling light completely illuminates the front of the train. The level 3 upgrade is a success. At the same time, a piercing notification echoes in his mind, congratulating him for breaking the record for the fastest level 3 upgrade. He receives a train captain module card as a reward. Then, he glances at the materials required for a level 4 train. When he sees Reverse Core and Blaze, 2 rare materials he has never even heard of, he can't help but gasp. But that isn't the real shock. What truly makes his palms sweat are the new upgrade options. His train speed has soared to 60 kilometers per hour, and the panel shows even more. We see that the shop has refreshed with blueprints for level 3 bullets and a power generator. Lin is ecstatic. It is as if the universe is giving him exactly what he wished for. However, his smile freezes the moment he sees the exorbitant prices. He thought having 10 train coins made him a wealthy man. But it turns out that even this small fortune isn't enough to clear his shopping cart. After a painful internal struggle, he finally grits his teeth. He spends 8 train coins to secure the bullet blueprint and the station departure right, which allows him to leave early. With this escape skill in hand, he immediately activates his sublimation talent. In the blink of an eye, a standard departure right is upgraded into a premium VIP version. Now, as long as the docking countdown has only 3 hours remaining, he can flee at any time. Having finished his shopping, our protagonist pulls out the red module card he received for breaking the record. The abstract eyeball pattern on the card is eerie enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Unfortunately, at that exact moment, a wave of intense exhaustion washes over him. Because his attributes are completely overextended, he can only clutch the card tightly as he collapses onto the cold floor, losing consciousness. While he sleeps in total oblivion, the chat room has turned into a living hell. Countless people are being hunted to the point of despair by the terrifying monsters roaming the night. Finally, at 6:30 the next morning, a cold broadcast ruthlessly announces the end of the first night. The first survival phase has officially concluded. The number of survivors has dropped to 3,825. Then, the broadcast drops an even more lethal rule in 3 days. Any train unable to reach 40 kilometers per hour will enter a danger state. This means that those who don't reach level 2 face certain death. The survivors in the sector are thrown into a state of absolute frenzy. Because of this, Li Xiaosheng, who holds the resource radar talent, instantly becomes the life-saving straw that everyone begs for. He manipulates the crowd in the chat, his ego swelling to its absolute limit. Suddenly, he remembers the man who sold a large number of guns. He realizes that the mysterious powerhouse who upgraded their train first is very likely Lin, and acting superior, he sends a friend request, intending to charitably offer Lin a chance to join his alliance. Naturally, his message is met with total silence. At 8:30 in the morning, Lennon painfully pushes himself up from the freezing floor. Rubbing his aching back, which feels like it might break, he pulls a white forest fruit from storage and begins to snack on it. As he tastes the sweet fruit, his mind finally clears. To him, the death race, starting in 3 days, isn't much of a threat at all. He hadn't expected that opening the window would let in such a bone-chilling cold. The sunny days of late have vanished without a trace, replaced by crushing, dark clouds. However, Lennon has no time to worry about this eerie weather. Instead, his eyes are fixed on the red card he received for breaking the record. After nearly being drained dry last night, he immediately activates his sublimation talent. His mental power drops by 30 points in an instant, but the result is worth it. To his surprise, the card is transformed into a high-level module, Gunfire Judgment. This incredible item doesn't just grant him instant mastery over every type of firearm. It also allows him to enchant bullets with mental power, increasing damage based on the enemy's level of sin. He suddenly pulls out the blacklight pistol from his waist. The once unfamiliar weight now feels perfectly natural. In this moment, he is essentially a peerless marksman. Feeling his strength surge, he opens the chat interface to look for deals, only to see a request from Li Xiaosheng. This man is full of empty promises, inviting Lin and to join some alliance. Curious if he can gain anything from the interaction, Lin casually accepts. Is the fishing rod ready? He asks. Li Xiaosheng frowns and immediately sends back a massive wall of text. He tries to manipulate Lin and into handing over resources to become a free henchman, arrogantly claiming he'll lead the sector's greatest power. Lin simply sneers, chewing his fruit while typing a few words. So, are you selling the rod or not? If not, forget it. After sending the message, he ignores the clown entirely. He turns his attention to the trading area instead, and in less than half a minute, he trades 20 mechanical parts and a biscuit to a survivor named Zhao Ling for a mechanical fishing rod. Once again, he activates his ability. With a flash of white light, the ordinary rod evolves into a low-level allure mechanical fishing rod. This treasure doesn't even require bait. Once it hits the water, fish will practically line up to be caught. Satisfied, he puts it away and accepts Zhao Ling's friend request. Just then, at 12:30 in the afternoon, a thunderous boom echoes through the sky. Torrential rain begins to hammer the train like a waterfall. Then, a cold broadcast rings out through the carriage. Today is a thunderstorm day, and the next station will likely be a thunderstorm platform. Lennon quickly looks toward the fork in the tracks. As expected, the platform difficulty has spiked to level 3. Before him lie 2 choices, the Falling Thunder Goblins, or the Goblin Tribe, and the Ghost Rain Manor. He unhesitatingly rules out the violent-sounding hunting platform and chooses the manor instead. In the next second, the train accelerates wildly, crashing through the storm. Accompanied by deafening thunder, the surrounding scenery undergoes a world-shaking transformation. We see the current station, Ghost Rain Manor. Danger level, high. Lennon stares intently out the window at a broken mountain road, shrouded in darkness. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning streaks across the night sky. In that flash, he spots a police car emitting green smoke nearby, with several bodies in uniform lying scattered across the ground. At this critical moment, he pulls out a train battery and inserts it into his little robot Wally. While Wally heads out to scout the path, Lennon quickly gathers all his life-saving equipment. He equips his pistol, rifle, and body armor, then decides to sublimate all the viral serums he obtained earlier. To his surprise, this item transforms into a divine-level potion that not only detoxifies, but also rapidly restores health. With everything ready, he wraps his raincoat tight, kicks open the door, and charges through the storm toward the wrecked police car. After confirming the bodies haven't turned, he immediately begins searching them. Beside one officer, he finds a mud-covered voice recorder. He presses the play button, and through the crackling static, a desperate report emerges. They were there to investigate the death of the tycoon, Ravi. This cursed manor has claimed countless lives. It is a forbidden zone. If the killer is found, Ravi's daughter will provide the police station with a massive investment. As for the culprit, a cold sneer echoes from the recorder. It was likely Ravi's maid, Mary. If they can't find the real killer, she'll do. Hearing this, Lennon begins rummaging through the scrapped car. He only manages to find 2 worn-out pistols and a police baton. He has no use for such junk, so he tosses them back toward the train. Instead, he takes the ID and disguises himself as the investigating chief. He follows the mountain road upward for less than 15 minutes until a massive, oppressive black manor looms directly in his path. Just then, a panicked security guard rushes toward him, demanding to know who he is. Lennon coldly reveals the police badge. The guard, who was wary just a second ago, suddenly bursts into tears of relief and welcomes him through the gates as chief. The guard insists that Lennon must arrest the maid, claiming she is the one who killed Master Ravi. But our protagonist senses something is wrong. If the master died 4 days ago, he asks, why did they wait a full day to call the police? The guard shakes his head in pure terror. It has rained for a week, and the phone lines are down. They didn't dare leave. To be honest, the man looks like he's seen a ghost. Lennon feels a slight chill. If this were a simple murder, the train system wouldn't have classified this station as a level 3 high-risk zone. Just as he is about to step through the castle gates, a blood-curdling scream erupts from above. We see him look up instinctively as a bolt of lightning tears through the sky. In that flash, the body of a woman falls straight down from the heights, landing in the grass right at his feet. The old butler expects him to be terrified by this 30-year-old curse that has claimed a dozen masters. But Lennon simply pulls out a mithril sanctuary stone. Suddenly, a blinding holy light illuminates the entire castle, banishing the shadows. He stares at the stone stairs leading to the upper levels and lets out a cold laugh. He forgot to mention that besides being a chief, he also moonlights as a priest. Naturally, he isn't going anywhere. The old butler stands there with his mouth agape, rubbing his eyes in utter disbelief. Only when the light fades does he snap back to reality, crying out that they are finally saved. Soon after, Lennon learns the dark secrets of the manor from the butler. The first owner was a bloodthirsty madman who used his own maid as a scapegoat, throwing her into prison. There, a corrupt police chief tortured her for days and eventually took her life. A few days later, a darkness covered the manor, and everyone inside met a violent, unnatural end. Even that corrupt chief didn't escape his fate. For 30 years, the manor changed hands a dozen times, and yet, every single owner died a gruesome death on a rainy night. The current master was a miser who bought the place for a bargain. And as we can see, he paid the ultimate price. The only difference this time is that they managed to contact the outside world. Lennon asks where that first maid died. The butler points toward the highest point of the castle, the clock tower. By now, he knows exactly what to do. This curse is likely a vengeful spirit, and if his cross can defeat it, the mission will be over. Carrying an oil lamp, he follows the butler up the stairs into the oppressive gloom. A cold breath echoes through the castle as the leaking rainwater drips rhythmically, painting a scene of eerie dread until we reach the highest level of the clock tower. There, the cross in Lennon's hand begins to emit a strange, pulsing heat, sending the old butler stumbling backward in terror. Gritting his teeth, our protagonist steps into the tower alone, only to feel a sudden, sharp sensation of being locked onto by something unseen. Whatever it is, it's charging toward him with incredible speed. To be honest, it's moving far too fast. At the critical moment, the mithril sanctuary cross releases a soft, brilliant light that illuminates the tower, followed by a piercing, agonized scream that tears through the night sky. With a sharp metallic clink, he looks down to see a smooth, translucent skull landing right at his feet. He wonders if it's truly over, as the victory feels somewhat surreal. He begins to search the surrounding area, but finds nothing else besides that single skull. It seems the crisis has been completely averted. He looks down at the cross in his hand and realizes he might have underestimated its power. For anyone else, this place would have been a certain death trap. But fortunately for the manor, the man who arrived was Lennon, and he happened to be carrying an upgraded sanctuary cross. Yes, quite lucky indeed. Without the ability to transform a level 2 mithril cross into a sanctuary cross, he would have been utterly defenseless against such malice. He exhales a long, deep breath and picks up the skull. Though its purpose is unclear, if it dropped as loot, he simply must take it with him. Outside, the old butler is wiping cold sweat from his brow, nearly falling over in fright when he sees the bone in Lin En's hand. Our protagonist waves him off, explaining there's no need for fear. The curse is broken, and this skull was its source. The butler offers his deepest thanks as they leave the top floor. Outside, the thunderstorm shows no signs of weakening, which is perfectly normal. The spirit he defeated wasn't the cause of the storm. Rather, this wretched weather is what created the spirit. The manor's troubles are finally resolved, yet Lin has no intention of leaving just yet. After all, this is the estate of a wealthy man. While it lacks weapons or train coins, it possesses something no other station can offer: actual supplies, real food, fresh vegetables, and meat. As a normal human being, he has missed a proper meal far too much. The butler calls him priest and offers a reward for their salvation, pulling a flawless, pure gemstone from the safe. It is a ruby, a priceless treasure the master acquired in his youth. The butler adds that Lin may take anything else he desires from the manor. That was exactly what he was waiting to hear. He accepts the cold, heavy gemstone, knowing he must leave the mountain soon. But first, he needs to restock. When he asks if he can take food and water, the old butler nods eagerly in agreement. We follow him into the kitchen, where the refrigerator is surprisingly stuffed with fresh meat, eggs, and vegetables. He begins packing it all immediately. He sprints back toward the train, a 20-minute round trip. After dropping the first load, he rushes back for more. The old butler, who is currently busy tending to the guard phone, is startled by his sudden return. He asks if the curse has returned. Lin waves it off, claiming God is simply hungry and sent him for more food. He makes several more trips, just like this. He clears out most of the kitchen's food and seasonings. Of course, he remembers there are still 2 living souls here, so he doesn't take everything. Just as he prepares to leave for the final time, the old butler calls out to him. Our protagonist stops and turns around. The butler leads Feng toward him, bowing deeply. He thanks the priest once more for saving their lives and offers one last item. He quickly explains that this isn't a hint about the many trips Lin has made. He truly doesn't mind if the manor is emptied. He simply forgot about this item until now. With that, he hands over a small wooden box tied with a silk ribbon. When Lin opens the box, he is genuinely stunned. The old butler sighs, noting the look of recognition on his face. He assumes Lin knows of the Run Company. These are the coins used to trade with them. The master only collected 3 over many years. Inside are indeed 3 train coins, but it is the name Run Company that truly shocks him. To be honest, he didn't expect to hear it here. It seems the faction from the Doomsday Town isn't just a background detail. Perhaps they will appear at other stations as well. He wonders just how massive this organization really is, but decides not to overthink it. He makes his final trip back to the train. Casting aside his polite facade, he looks at the mountain of food, pots, and pans he's gathered and can't help but smile. There is no use worrying about the future when one can simply focus on living well. He stores everything away in the train storage unit. He sets up a grill and lays down a thick, premium steak, ready to enjoy his first warm, proper meal since arriving in this world. As the meal cooks, we see him placing containers outside to collect rainwater. While waiting for the meat to grill, he begins to organize his special spoils from this station. The first is a level 3 earthbound object that can be placed in the train area to dispel blood fragments. The other is a level 1 ruby. The system prompt indicates it is extremely valuable, suggesting that certain entities might even buy it with train coins. He wonders if anyone would truly trade coins for such a thing. Without much hesitation, he tosses the gem aside for now. It is then that his gaze falls upon the skull he obtained earlier. He decisively activates his sublimation skill. An invisible force instantly envelopes the skull, and in the blink of an eye, his physical strength plummets to 49. His mental energy takes an even sharper dive to 50 as his reserves are completely drained. The object in his hand is no longer recognizable as a skull. In its place sits a perfectly smooth, glowing jade stone. This, as it turns out, is a level 4 pure earthbound stone. Not only can it be placed on the train to dispel blood fragments, but it can also ignore any blood fragment power below level 4. The most incredible part is its ability to automatically absorb negative effects cast upon him. This means that until he reaches level 5, he will be safe from danger whenever he encounters a supernatural type station. However, that isn't even the most terrifying part of this discovery. He can clearly feel that the stone's potential hasn't been exhausted yet. It can actually be sublimated further. Just then, a noise comes from the collection station. Lin, still holding his grilled meat, looks toward the sound. We see Wally crawling back in through the hole below. The little robot is clutching a bloodstained gift box in his arms. The little fellow wobbles over to our protagonist and holds the item out. It is a level 3 treasure chest that can be opened. He praises Wally, promising to give him extra engine oil later as a reward. Wally doesn't seem to understand the praise, simply returning to the collection station to enter sleep mode. Now that he has the chest, there is no longer any reason to stay at this station. He decisively chooses to depart, and the train slowly accelerates, piercing through the void. In an instant, he leaves the dark thunderclouds behind and returns to the endless wilderness. A moment later, a system broadcast echoes through the carriage. All survivors have now left the 4th station. This not only unlocks the station chat function, but also removes the newbie shadow protection. Most lethally, monsters will now begin attacking the train during the day as well. To be honest, the difficulty just spiked significantly. As the broadcast fades, the chat room instantly explodes with activity. Everyone is wondering if the system even wants them to survive if monsters are now a threat day and night. The chat is filled with despair as people realize monsters will now appear during the day. It seems the world simply wants them dead, which, to be honest, is a fair assessment. Even level 2 trains should have left the station by now, so the delay in the broadcast is suspicious. Some wonder if someone has already reached level 3. Others dismiss the idea as a joke, claiming it's impossible to gather that many materials so quickly. One even bets he'll eat his words if it turns out to be true. With the threat of daytime monsters, the demand for ammunition skyrockets. One survivor desperately offers beef-flavored insect meat in exchange for bullets. After enduring the cruelty of the 4th station, those who remain have been forced to adapt. The death toll this time was lower, with less than 1,000 lost. Exactly 3,455 survivors remain. We notice the chat scrolling much slower than it did at the very beginning of this journey. However, Lennon isn't paying attention to the chatter at all. His focus is entirely fixed on the treasure chest in his hands as he prepares to use his skill. In an instant, his physical strength plummets to 33, while his mental energy drops to 45. The level 3 chest begins to glow and transform. It successfully becomes a level 4 chest. He takes a bite of his grilled meat and wipes his hands, recalling that his last level 4 chest gave him the sentry tower. He hopes this one won't disappoint him either. Taking a deep breath, he opens the chest to see what fortune has brought him this time. The rewards are enough to make him gasp. He finds 8 train coins, along with a blueprint for a level 4 watcher surveillance system. There is also a level 4 safety bracelet, a blueprint for a level 4 clockwork monkey doll bomb, and even a fragment of a profane card. Without a doubt, this haul is even more incredible than the last one. He can't wait to pull everything out and examine his new tools. The Watcher blueprint would allow him to monitor any part of the train to prevent intrusions. Unfortunately, he is currently lacking the necessary electronic components. The safety bracelet is a rugged piece of equipment that can block a single fatal blow before breaking. In this world, staying alive is the ultimate priority. He immediately snaps it onto his right wrist, feeling a sudden, inexplicable sense of security. But when he looks at the bomb blueprint, he hits a snag. The clockwork monkey is designed to walk to a designated location and self-destruct once wound up. However, this little toy requires a steep price. It needs 400 grams of gunpowder. He shakes his head helplessly. Having a blueprint without the materials is a truly frustrating position to be in. He turns his attention to the final reward, a black and gold card fragment. It appears he needs to collect 3 of these to complete the profane card. Since even a level 4 chest only yields a fragment, this item is clearly something special. After stowing it away, he opens his interface once more. Lennon turns to the trading platform to acquire gunpowder, but the search proves difficult. It seems those with the means to help have already survived the hardest trials. Gunpowder is a strategic resource that no one sells lightly, and when they do, the markup is truly astronomical. Not wanting to be taken for a fool, he posts a message directly in the chat, even spending a train coin to pin it at the top. He offers compressed biscuits paired with water or fresh tomatoes for every 200 grams of gunpowder. At the same time, he lists a request for electronic components, offering water and biscuits for every 10 pieces. In the castle kitchen of the 4th station, the most abundant item was tomatoes, and he had managed to haul back 3 large crates. Such fresh produce is a priceless treasure in this wasteland. As we might expect, the moment this message appears, the survivors erupt into a frenzy. A pinned message costs a fortune, after all. But the others remember that the great Lin and was selling rifles back at the 1st station. He certainly isn't lacking for funds. The chat is stunned by the sight of fresh tomatoes. Most haven't tasted a real vegetable in what feels like an eternity. One survivor mentions finding gunpowder in a corpse's backpack, while others desperately beg to buy a gun using their own train coins. As he suspected, there are indeed capable people among the survivors. In a very short time, he completes 10 successful trades. Looking at the 2,000 grams of gunpowder now before him, he immediately combines it with metal to craft his first batch of ammunition. 100 rounds of level 3 bullets appear out of thin air. He weighs them in his hand, noting they feel much heavier than the level 1 rounds. The difference in quality is palpable. He quickly loads his weapon, chambers a round, and aims at a pile of scrap metal nearby. Previously, his blacklight pistol using D-rank bullets could only manage a simple puncture, but with these new level 3 rounds, the result is staggering, as the metal pile is blown completely apart. The increase in destructive power is truly immense. Deeply satisfied with this masterpiece, he wastes no time in converting the rest of his gunpowder into more ammunition. Soon, 999 fresh level 3 rounds are stored in his special unit. Now, even when he is outside the train, he can access them at any time. Just then, his interface flickers as 3 of his friends send him private messages. Lin Shaosheng is still rambling about his delusions of grandeur and ruling the world together. Lennon, naturally, decides to ignore him. He considers Zhao Ling, who wants to buy a gun with train coins, a smart partner worth working with. However, the most surprising message comes from Shangwan Xue, asking what level his train has reached. Seeing this, Linen pauses for a moment, sensing a hidden motive. This woman is definitely testing him. But after the 4th station, others have surely reached level 2, revealing his rank. Doesn't bother him at all. He simply replies that he just leveled up. On the other side of the screen, Xue falls silent before revealing her true goal. She wants to buy ammunition. He narrows his eyes. As the only other person to reach level 2 besides himself, she surely possesses more resources than the rest. He agrees to sell, but demands 1 train coin for every 30 rounds. She accuses him of robbery, but he calmly states he is merely presenting the facts. To be honest, his ammunition is well worth that price. He sends her a screenshot of the bullets, and seeing that dazzling level 3 tag, Xue is left absolutely speechless. After a deep breath, she begins to bargain fiercely, and they finally settle on 40 rounds per coin. Unexpectedly, she then asks for a gun, so he seizes the chance to offer an exquisite level 2 marksman rifle. He offers it for 2 train coins, throwing in 10 extra bullets to make it a clean 50. A very fair deal, wouldn't we agree? She hesitates for a long while before finally agreeing through gritted teeth. But he doesn't stop there. He also convinces her to use a blueprint to craft him a wooden bed. With 3 new coins and a soft bed in hand, he has truly made a killing. Afterward, he removes the low-level rifles from his defense platform and upgrades them all to level 2. He sells them to Zhao Yu for 2 coins each, and even swaps 100 low-level rounds for 5 of her magazines. After this wave of trading, his wealth skyrockets to 16 train coins. Soon, the electronic components arrive as well. He immediately crafts a monitor and installs it in the 3rd carriage. With everything ready, it is time to address the power issue. He spends 6 coins on a power generator blueprint, a device that usually requires fuel. Since there is no oil to be found on the market, most would be stuck. But that won't stop our protagonist. He taps the generator and activates his sublimation. The device is enchanted to run on stones, meaning he never has to worry about buying oil again. Even tossing in common wood allows it to run perfectly. He immediately buys several light bulbs to brighten up the carriages. On his 4th day in this world, Linen can finally live like a normal person, lying on a soft bed under a steady glow. As the night quietly recedes, he wakes the next morning, stretches, and eats another white forest fruit as part of his routine. He walks toward the front of the train, but the moment he pushes open the door, a rolling heat wave slams into him. The intensity nearly knocks him back. It is incredibly hot. Suddenly, the system's cold voice echoes through a broadcast. The weather has changed to hot wind and rain. All conductors must maintain their body temperature to prevent heat stroke. He quickly retreats to the temperature-controlled carriage to wash his face, then braves the heat again to check the chat room. Inside, things have already reached a boiling point. Everyone is complaining about the heat, claiming they are about to explode. It's at least 40 degrees out there. Between the sun and this iron box, the train has essentially become a giant oven. Some suggest enduring it for a few more hours until the next station, but others scoff at the idea of just holding on. They notice their stamina and mental health are plummeting. If the heat doesn't kill them, the madness surely will. Linen wipes the sweat from his brow and downs an entire bottle of mineral water before checking his own status. His stamina is indeed dropping rapidly, yet his mental attribute remains steady at 110. How curious. Perhaps eating so many white forest fruits has pushed his mental strength far beyond that of an ordinary person. Suddenly, the piercing crack of a gunshot interrupts his thoughts. He turns sharply to see the defense system opening fire. Outside the window, a pack of withered, gaunt figures is desperately chasing the train. They can't keep up with his level 3 engine. But the most alarming part is that the system gave no warning broadcast at all. We see that in the chat room. No one else has encountered monsters. It seems his luck is simply that bad, triggering a completely random encounter. Just then, his private messages flash frantically. It's Zhao Ling, the one who made the automatic fishing rod, asking a question. He asks if there are monsters outside Lin and train. Glancing at the creatures he just outpaced, Linen asks if he's seen them too. As it turns out, the poor girl had just been swarmed by a terrifying cloud of bees. If it hadn't been for the rifle he sold her earlier, and her train barely managing to hit 35 kilometers per hour, she would have been bird food. Flying threats are quite different from ground ones. Linen gets straight to the point and asks what she wants. Surprisingly, she hopes to trade fish for basic train upgrade materials. With only 2 days left until the next night survival phase, everyone is desperately hoarding resources to upgrade their own trains. Who would be foolish enough to sell life-saving materials? Since Lin and has plenty of food, he doesn't even hesitate to decline. He sends a quick apology, which sends Zhao Ling into a complete panic. She clearly views him as her only lifeline and begs for help. She pleads for resources, certain she won't survive the next night without an upgrade. It seems she possesses a very peculiar talent. She immediately sends over a screenshot of her hidden card. When Linen opens it, his eyes widen in genuine surprise. This is the first living talent he has seen besides his own, fortune conservation. After good luck, misfortune must follow, and vice versa. In her last encounter, she caught hundreds of fish in a level 1 chest without using any bait. Such heaven-defying luck, however, has a price. The cost of that fortune is a guaranteed encounter with fatal bad luck next time. No wonder she's willing to expose her secrets for materials. Looking at this absurd talent, Lennon rubs his chin and sinks into thought. Helping her isn't entirely out of the question, really. After all, keeping someone with such a rare talent alive could lead to much better trades in the future. He asks her what she's missing. She immediately lists a massive amount of basic materials. Lennon gives a cold laugh and, without any politeness, sets a sky-high price. He'll provide the materials, but only in exchange for the items from her last treasure chest plus 10 fish. To be honest, it's a steep demand. Furthermore, once she upgrades, she must send him screenshots of all her train's upgrade options. He is certainly no soft-hearted philanthropist. If he didn't drive a hard bargain, he wouldn't be doing justice to his rare materials. To his surprise, Xiaoling doesn't refuse at all. Instead, she showers him with gratitude, calling him a saint. A moment later, a light flashes, and a heavy pile of treasure chest loot arrives, along with 10 freshwater fish. Lennon looks at the supposed junk from the level 1 chest, specifically a bottle of plant nutrient solution. He feels a bit skeptical about its value. However, the very next second, he happens to click on 2 other items that catch his eye. A single sublimation actually transforms the liquid into a blessed plant elixir. Without wasting a moment, Lennon begins to pour the potion onto the soil of the white forest fruit sapling. The tiny sprout, which previously wouldn't have even filled a tooth gap, is suddenly shrouded in a blinding white light. In the blink of an eye, it begins to grow upward with a wild, frantic energy. We see the branches multiplying at a visible speed, and Lennon pinches his thigh hard enough to gasp from the pain. This is no dream, it seems. To be honest, he never expected this, and a closer look at the attributes leaves him in a cold sweat. Not only have the side effects of these 55 fruits completely vanished, but they have evolved into level 4 blessed white forest fruits. Eating one instantly restores full stamina and grants immunity. He can't resist taking a large bite. A rich sweetness explodes in his mouth. He realizes now that he has definitely benefited from Zhao Ling's heaven-defying luck. Talent. However, he remembers that her misfortune attribute hasn't triggered yet, and right then, he makes a firm decision. At the next stop, he must stay as far away from her as possible. Outside, the heat waves are rolling as others struggle to survive the tropical storm. Meanwhile, Lennon is hiding in his 22-degree constant temperature carriage, eating barbecue and drinking beer. It is a moment of pure comfort, but naturally, that is when the countdown for the next crossroads ruthlessly flickers to life. The 2 options presented are enough to shatter his good mood entirely. Platform 1 is the Deep Bat Cave, a level 4 slaughter platform. Platform 2 is the Spirit Maze, a level 4 mission platform. Both are level 4, which makes his skin crawl. This is surely the result of being infected by Zhao Ling's lingering bad luck. After weighing the risks, he decisively presses the button for Platform 2. If the mission fails, he'll simply run for it. As the countdown hits 0, the scorching sun is instantly swallowed by a deathly and absolute darkness. The blood-red warning text on the system panel is so bright it almost makes his eyes ache. This station carries a danger warning and a chilling exclamation mark. Outside the window lies a deserted station covered in an eerie, fine snow. Just then, from the depths of the empty platform, the sudden sound of hurried footsteps echoes through the air. He doesn't hesitate to draw his blacklight pistol, the fire judgment module instantly locking onto the target. However, the figure appearing outside the door is surprisingly a young girl, barely 12, in a white coat. Standing on her tiptoes, she presses her large blue eyes against the glass, staring inside. "Mr. Inspector, you finally arrived," she whispers. "An inspector?" Lennon frowns, cautiously pushing the door open. He knows that if she makes even one suspicious move, his weapon will fire instantly. "What is your name, little girl?" Tina blinks at him with an expression of pure innocence, her face lighting up with excitement. "The sister said the chief inspector arriving by train would be the one to save us." She tells him they have been waiting for a very long time. Seeing the desperate hope in her eyes, he puts on a kind smile. "If you say the man on the train is the inspector, then I am the one you seek." Tina immediately begins to jump with joy, insisting on pulling him outside. He hands her a white forest fruit, which she begins to eat without a second thought. He hangs the sanctuary cross around his neck and quietly sets his warning device to its maximum power setting. Only then does he step out, following Tina into the heart of this deathly silent town, buried under a layer of fine snow. There isn't a single streetlight in sight. Only the church at the town's center glows with a faint, ghostly flame from its spire. Even more unsettling is the sensation of countless eyes watching them from the darkness, their gaze fixed and unmoving. Eerie whispers drift through the air, yet Tina remains unbothered, skipping along until they reach the front of the church. "Mr. Inspector, everyone has waited so long. Please, come inside." He stands upon the white stone steps, his hand gripping his pistol with a white-knuckled intensity. "Very well, little Tina," he says coldly. "You go in first." As the heavy doors are slowly pushed open, a sudden, brilliant light momentarily blinds him. And then, we see it. The sight inside makes the hair on his neck stand up. Hundreds of residents sit like frozen statues on either side, their heads bowed in a frantic, silent prayer. Only a blonde nun in black, standing at the very front, moves. She slowly lowers her black leather book and stares directly at him. Tina's excited voice echoes strangely through the hall. "Sister, I've brought the inspector." At those words, hundreds of people suddenly begin to move as one. Like puppets on a string, the townspeople stop their prayers in unison and fix their gaze on Lennon. It's enough to make anyone's skin crawl. Without a moment's hesitation, he clicks the safety off his blacklight pistol and aims it directly at the blonde nun. If she makes a single move, he is prepared to put a bullet right through her head. Strangely, the nun doesn't flinch. Instead, she offers him a remarkably kind smile. "Mr. Inspector, there is no need for such tension. We mean you no harm." She casually sends little Tina away, and the townspeople actually obey. They return to their prayers as if nothing happened. Then, acting perfectly normal, she steps down from the altar and reaches for a small box. She walks straight toward him while he keeps his gun pressed against her forehead, cold sweat dripping down his neck. To be honest, who could blame him? "I don't accept gifts for nothing," he warns. "Stay right there. This place is far too eerie." Yet she doesn't even blink at his threat. Ignoring the gun, she leans down and opens the box. And when we see what's inside, it's enough to make his jaw drop in disbelief. It is a fragment, 1/3 of a black and gold profane card. However, what happens next is even more bone-chilling than the discovery itself. The nun kneels before the card with a beaming smile, praying fervently. The words she whispers next make him feel as if he's fallen into a frozen lake. Only a profanu of the gods could reach this world. "You aren't an inspector at all. You are a train conductor, aren't you?" He is stunned that she knows about the conductors. He glances at the sanctuary cross on his chest, but it remains completely silent. This proves the woman isn't a blood spirit, yet she continues to approach him with the card, her smile growing increasingly fanatical. "Tell me, nameless conductor, is this town your very first stop?" As she draws closer, Lennon realizes it's time to leave. Deep down, he has only one thought left: run. A second later, he lets out a cold snort and prepares to make his move. He turns on his heel, without hesitation, and bolts toward the station. After all, only a fool would stay here. Naturally, this makes the nun lose her temper. She screams at the top of her lungs, commanding her puppet-like followers to intercept him. Their speed is terrifying, far beyond that of a normal human. Seeing them closing in, he grits his teeth and fires a shot, blowing the head off the lead puppet. It's a desperate move, to say the least. The blonde nun mocks him from behind, her voice full of triumph. "It's useless. A level 3 novice conductor like you can't possibly destroy my puppets." But before she can even finish her sentence, her expression shifts into one of pure shock. And here is where the situation changes entirely. She is horrified to discover that her connection to that puppet has been completely severed. She never could have imagined that Lennon was using level 3 bullets enhanced with armor-piercing enchantments. Relying on his gunfire judgment module, he maneuvers wildly, landing headshot after headshot. He carves a bloody path through what should have been a lethal encirclement. In the nick of time, he manages to flee until he is less than 100 meters from the station. Suddenly, without any warning, the blonde nun teleports directly in front of him. His warning device alarms frantically, but before he can even fire, several black chains materialize out of thin air and tightly jam his gun barrels. His mouth twitches as he completely resigns himself to fate. He tells her they have no grudge, and she should just take what she wants. Instead, she walks up to him with a beaming smile and looks him up and down. She tells him to relax, promising not to hurt him as long as he stops running. Helplessly, he collapses onto the ground. Between the chains and the puppets, this is simply not a monster he can handle. Even with his gunfire judgment trump card, he has no chance of winning. She then introduces herself as Shea and pulls him back toward the church. Once they return, Shea takes that 1/3 fragment of the profane card and forces it into his hand. The more precious this trash is, the more it feels like it's burning his palm. He suggests she should just keep it for herself. Shea simply lets out a giggle and pats his shoulder, claiming a kind nun would never harm anyone, to warn him not to throw it away. She reaches out and grabs a puppet's head with her bare hands. With a sickening crack, that skull, which even his armor-piercing round struggled with, is crushed into powder by her grip alone. Lennon swallows hard, terrified into promising that he will absolutely not lose it. When she asks about his talent, he is too scared to make a sound. Seeing him play dead, this strange woman surprisingly drops the subject. The air falls into a dead silence until Shea finally breaks the awkwardness herself. Exasperated, she asks why he isn't curious about her identity. He tells her curiosity killed the cat, and he'd rather not know. As it turns out, that statement makes her lose her temper instantly. She glares at him while crushing another puppet's head just to vent her frustration. Smelling the floral scent as she leans in, he panics and starts rattling off a dozen questions. However, she changes her mind faster than a turning page, covering his mouth and complaining that he's asking too much. Then, she kicks a puppet aside and crosses her long legs. Sitting on the bench, she takes a deep breath and switches back into her holy nun persona. She tells him that, in a way, she is his senior. She arrived in this world 20 years ago. Hearing this, Lennon feels a wave of shock. He can't help but wonder just how old this woman actually is. She seems to read his mind instantly, and her gaze turns resentful. To save himself, he quickly changes the subject. He asks why she is here, but Shea's eyes suddenly dim. Her next words make him feel as though he's fallen into a pit of ice. She explained she was sealed away. The person who did it erased this station from the map entirely. High-level trains can't find it, and low-level trains simply aren't qualified to enter. It is a ghost station, forgotten by the world. He realizes it's because of his talent. His eyes flicker away. If his sublimation talent hadn't triggered a fork in destiny, he would have died at the slaughter platform long ago. Suddenly, she drops her smile, her tone becoming incredibly grave. She warns him never to tell anyone about his talent, and especially never to expose that profane card. If people find out, countless enemies will come for his life. At best, he'd end up sealed away like her. The station is just that dangerous. He almost tries to shove the card back into her hands right then, but her firm, unquestionable gaze forces him to swallow his words. At least, he tells himself, she doesn't seem to have any intention of killing him for now. To his surprise, she snaps her fingers. Several chains materialize in midair, instantly assembling themselves into a section of train tracks. She clicks her tongue, a trace of fear flashing in her eyes. She tells him that in her era, there was a madman. To measure the size of the wilderness, he united all the top captains to push train speeds to an unimaginable level. Despite that godlike speed, he traveled for an entire year without encountering a single other train. Then one day, his icon went dark, the train was destroyed, and everyone died. Only then did people realize the truth about their world. She decides to answer one last question, telling him he'll have to figure out the rest on his own. After that, she produces a lollipop out of nowhere and stuffs it into his mouth. The cool, sweet taste instantly washes away his exhaustion. Lennon swallows hard and asks the question buried deepest in his heart. Does she know anything about the soft company? Surprisingly, she looks genuinely confused, explaining casually that such groups are just people who have given up on survival and banded together. Looking at her expression, it's clear she doesn't take an organization like that seriously at all. A moment later, she suddenly claps her hands together. She offers to show him her train, and right then, little Tina comes skipping out from behind the church. The girl even takes Lin An's hand to thank him repeatedly, while Shea raises an eyebrow with pride, noting that Tina is her finest puppet creation. Lin An's eyes widen in shock, and he can't help but reach out to poke Tina's warm cheek. To be honest, she feels exactly like a real person. Suddenly, a terrifying thought flashes through his mind. He wonders if, should she ever lose her temper, she might turn a handsome guy like him into a puppet as well, which would be the end of everything. Just then, the entire church erupts in a violent roar. The building begins to tremble uncontrollably as Shea leads Tina up to the control platform. Countless familiar light screens suddenly surge into view. It turns out this massive church is actually the engine of her train. While Lin is still reeling from the shock, a small black box is suddenly tossed into his arms. She calls it a small reward, something perfectly suited for his current needs. As she speaks, the entire church begins to transform wildly. Black tracks manifest out of thin air beneath the wheels, and in the blink of an eye, this behemoth has already charged out of the town and appeared within the station. The speed is, quite frankly, absurd. Compared to her, his own broken-down train is practically a snail. Seeing his stunned expression, she wears a look of pure pride. She asks if he's envious, revealing that she is a level 57 captain. Lennon is completely stunned by such an exaggerated number. It makes his skin crawl. Logically, every level up requires entering a higher-tier platform. He wonders if such insane level 50 stages even exist. She tells him not to overthink it, explaining that the highest platform is only level 12. After clearing his confusion, she walks over and gently pokes his face. She warns him never to lose that profane card. Even if it's dangerous, he must synthesize it as soon as possible. It will bring him immense benefits, she promises, her voice suddenly tinged with a hint of melancholy. She announces it's time for her to leave. She tells him to enjoy his time on land, mentioning that the houses in town are just carriages she built on a whim. As she turns away, Shea's gaze pierces through the church, staring fixedly at the labor camp that sealed her away for 15 years. She tells him to burn it down when he leaves. She declares that she will never return to this place again. Immediately after, the church doors slowly creak open and little Tina takes Lin An's hand, smiling brightly as she urges him to step off. Looking at this adorable little girl, who is so lifelike it's hard to believe she's a puppet, he can't help but reach out and pat her head. He then pulls a blessed white forest fruit from his storage space and hands it over to her. Tina begins happily munching on the fruit, but nearby, Shea narrows her eyes as she catches the scent. Her gaze is filled with a shock she can't quite hide. She clearly never expected a mere level 3 captain to possess a storage carriage, let alone rare items carrying a blessed aura. Lennon, however, doesn't notice her internal calculations at all. He simply hugs the black box tightly and steps out the door. It's only when he's standing outside that he finally sees the full scale of this level 57 train. The pure black body is wrapped in white angelic patterns, with 18 incredibly magnificent carriages stretching across the tracks. It's hard to believe that such a normal-looking exterior could house an entire, massive church. This level of space compression technology is enough to make his eyes pop. When he turns back to look at his own 2-carriage scrap metal doggy, the contrast is honestly painful. He tells himself that one day, his train will be even grander. But as soon as he steps back into his own humble ride, a friend request from Shea suddenly pops up on the light screen. Deep down, he knows getting involved with such a terrifying woman is asking for trouble. His instinct is to hit decline, but a second later, the screen is forcibly overwritten. A message asking if he really intended to refuse, paired with a smiling emoji, is plastered right in his face. To save his life and avoid becoming a puppet, he has no choice but to click accept instantly. He then gives her a cheeky nickname, Golden Retriever Brat. Little did he know, his sense of humor would be met with an immediate, forceful response. A message appears saying that now, no matter where he runs, she can find him. Shivering at the threat, he quietly changes her nickname to Evil Golden Retriever. Just then, the entire town of Ghost Spirit begins to tremble violently. A deafening roar tears through the sky as brilliant fireworks explode overhead. After being stationary for 15 long years, this mechanical behemoth lets out a triumphant laugh. Shea's voice rings out, announcing that they are finally leaving. The sound echoes through the heavens via the broadcast, and suddenly, countless chains emerge from thin air, covering the tracks. The space around the station twists violently as the Dark Angel prepares to depart. Just as the words fade, the angelic patterns on the black hull begin to flap like living wings. This breathtaking, dynamic exterior carries the entire train as it dives headfirst into the void, vanishing without a trace. Once again, the world returns to a deathly silence. Lennon looks at his own scrap metal train and finds he doesn't even have the strength to be jealous anymore. He sighs and turns his attention to the black box Shea tossed to him before leaving. It looks light and ordinary, honestly no different from a common gift box. But the moment his gaze sweeps over the system notification, he is struck as if by lightning. It is a level 9 security box. Not only is it immune to any violent attempt to open it, but anything placed inside is considered absolutely secure. This is incredibly generous. Even if the box were empty, a level 9 container is worth a fortune. Suddenly, he forgets all about his fear of the evil woman. Only one thought remains. What kind of heaven-sent treasure is hidden inside this top-tier safe? With trembling hands, he extends his thumb and presses it firmly against the center of the box. He never imagined that as a level 3 novice, he would somehow end up with god-tier materials that the entire server would kill for. As the security box clicks open, we see him stare in utter disbelief. The first slot holds flame stones, the second, 10 kilograms of gold. The third slot contains 10 kilograms of mithril, and in the fourth, there are actually 3 lollipops. However, just as he assumes, these are just ordinary sweets. The item description shatters his reality. These are actually level 8 healing lollipops. The label clearly states they are the masterpiece of a certain dark nun. As long as you aren't dead, eating one ensures survival. Suddenly, his private chat interface flashes frantically. Shea, the golden retriever he labeled as evil, has sent a long string of messages. She explains that moving from level 3 to 4 is a significant hurdle, and for a newcomer, getting flame stones usually requires combat. Not only did she gift him rare materials, but she also warned him to save the candy for injuries and told him to find that mysterious card. Reading these words, a wave of complex emotions washes over him. He offers a silent thanks, though he realizes he might not need them to level up. He tells himself that while materials are one thing, this favor is something he will never forget. Since he already holds 2/3 of the profane card set, he decides that if he ever encounters the final piece, he'll do whatever it takes to get it. He is truly curious about what might happen if the set is completed. Meanwhile, on the other side of the wilderness, the Dark Angel is cruising through the leaves. We see Shea eating a freshly stolen white forest fruit while gazing at the horizon. Suddenly, a mysterious message pops up. He's back. The sender asks if she's surprised, but Shea just scoffs. To be honest, after being sealed for 15 years, her escape wasn't exactly a miracle. However, the next sentence reveals a shocking secret. The person who opened the world holds the other third of the set. Shea retorts immediately that it's now 2/3. The chat goes deathly silent for a moment. Then, Shea adds that, since she obtained in days what he nearly died for, she is more worthy of it. She even types out 8 chilling words on the screen. Avenge every grudge, settle every debt. She then asks about the Wind Company, who targeted low-level stations, and the Celestial Organization's inspectors. The reply she receives is enough to make anyone's skin crawl. The delivery company isn't worth worrying about. But as for those pitiful good people from the Celestial Organization, they have completely vanished. We return to Spirit Town, where Lennon has entered a state of frantic scavenging. He isn't just dismantling houses made from old train cars. He's using that level 9 security box to stuff entire carriages inside. In just a few hours, he stockpiles over 600 kilograms of wood and 700 kilograms of metal. With gold, mithril, and flamestones all collected, upgrading to a level 4 train should be a walk in the park. However, since he possesses the sublimation talent, he naturally won't take the ordinary path. While he's lounging in his chair like a lazy fish, the sound of mechanical treads approaches. His little assistant, Wally, whom he'd almost forgotten, wobbles over its mechanical arm, clutching a hunk of iron. At first, he thinks it's just scrap, but one look at the stats makes him jump to his feet. This is actually A level 4 treasure chest. He is completely baffled. Since this town was Shea's creation, there was no reason for her to leave a chest hidden here. Could this be a surprise she left for him? Looking at the chest, he begins to have second thoughts. A level 4 chest, if enhanced by his talent, could become level 5. Yet, his intuition is screaming at him that things aren't quite that simple. Linen notes that his stamina and spirit are capped at 210 points. Upgrading from level 3 to 4 costs 55, but jumping from 4 to level 5 is never as simple as just doubling the cost. Since chests can reach level 12 if he can't manage a level 4 sublimation now, the future requirements will surely become terrifying. Instead of shrinking back, however, his heart begins to race with a strange excitement. After all, one never knows the limit until it's tested. But just as he prepares to start, he remembers the promise he made to Shea. He trades a few biscuits on the platform for a barrel of diesel, pouring it over the wooden planks connecting the various houses. With a flick of his windproof lighter, a spark catches. In an instant, the flames catch the wind and roar toward the sky, turning the entirety of Spirit Town into a sea of fire. Meanwhile, the departure zone ahead of the train begins to shimmer and fade. He decisively presses the start button to leave the station early. A second later, the world shifts, and the wilderness heat hits him like a physical blow. The temperature hasn't dropped even a single degree. He quickly retreats into the climate-controlled carriage, dragging his treasure-filled security box into the corner. As he prepares for the next leg of the journey, he stuffs the 3 carriages salvaged from Spirit Town into the security box. The very last slot is naturally reserved for that mysterious profane card, while his original junk is tossed unceremoniously into the storage unit. It is only when he is back inside his own train that the lingering tension of his narrow escape finally begins to vanish. Collapsing onto his bed, he holds up the level 4 treasure chest and gives a hollow, self-deprecating laugh. He never imagined that, in such a lethal beginner's zone, a level 4 chest wouldn't even be his greatest haul. Yet, despite knowing so many secrets, he knows he cannot simply stop and rest. The sublimation process is far from over. He stares intently at the hunk of iron in his hands, but a bizarre sensation begins to well up inside his body. It is a clear, glaring warning. If he attempts to force this sublimation now, it will surely be his end. Naturally, he decides to ignore that. He pulls out the healing lollipop Shea gave him and pops it into his mouth. The sweet flavor explodes across his palate, and his stamina begins to soar at a terrifying rate of 10 points per second, reaching its peak in a blink. Immediately after, he slams his hand onto the level 4 chest and activates sublimation. In that instant, his stamina and spirit begin to drain away like a bursting dam. Even with the healing candy constantly replenishing him, it feels like trying to extinguish a forest fire with a cup of water. It is only at this moment that Lin truly understands. It wasn't that his attributes were lacking, but rather that items above level 4 were desperately resisting his talent. But could he really just give up? If he stops now, his path of sublimation will be forever stuck at the level 4 threshold. However, he has always been the type to push until something breaks. Since the item refuses him, he decides to change the rules. With a cold laugh, he slowly presses his other hand against his own heart. He is going to attempt the impossible. He will perform a sublimation on his own sublimation talent. This act of near madness seems to trigger a fundamental taboo of the world. Suddenly, countless blinding, blood-red light screens instantly swallow his train whole, while players across the entire region feel their skin crawl from the terrifying pressure. Lennon loses consciousness entirely within that sea of crimson. In the endless darkness, eerie system notifications begin to bombard his ears. Not only is the fork in fate for the 6th platform forcibly triggered, but even the system options are flickering with constant errors. Correction failed. Timeout. Forcing a random platform. The train is now arriving at the 6th station. Level 4 slaughter platform, west. Hope Valley. Error detected. Unknown interference found. At that moment, the system's voice rises to a sharp, piercing pitch. System forced revision. Intervener successfully eliminated. Immediately after, the cold countdown is forcibly locked into an invalid state, accompanied by an extremely dangerous blood-red warning. When he finally opens his eyes again, harsh sunlight is streaming through the window onto his face. He looks around in a daze. Outside is no longer a desolate wasteland, but a strangely lush and dense primeval forest. At the same time, his memories from before the blackout come rushing back like a tide. He looks down at his feet and sees that the hunk of iron that had been resisting him is now lying there quietly. It is a level 5 treasure chest, ready to be opened. He had actually succeeded. With trembling fingers, he opens his personal status panel and stares at the talent column. There, behind the original description, 4 blood-red words have appeared: ignore resistance. Not only that, but as he looks up toward the distant watchtower, the crushing weight of the world's rules has completely vanished. However, before he can even savor his joy, the system's background logs pour a bucket of ice water over his excitement. While he was unconscious, an unknown entity forcibly interfered with his destination, attempting to throw him into a lethal slaughter platform and trap him there forever. He was meant to be locked here forever. Fortunately, the train system was efficient enough to intervene, forcibly erasing that meddling entity on the spot. Even so, Lin's scheduled stop has been extended to a grueling 10 hours. Luckily, he still has his VIP benefits to lean on, which might help. he manages to shorten the departure time to 7 hours. Taking a deep breath, he forces his racing heart to calm down, regardless of the danger outside. First, he must open the chest. Increasing his combat power is the only way forward. With a flash of golden light, the level 5 rewards appear. The loot is dazzling. Not only 10 train coins, but also 2 top-tier modules and 2 level 5 items. It's quite a haul, to be honest. The system binding module allows the interface to be permanently linked to him. No more running back to the front of the train like a fool to identify items. The station activation module is even more absurd. For just 1 train coin per hour, he can move the train freely within the platform area. Without a moment's hesitation, Lennon crushes both modules to use them immediately. Then, his gaze fixes intensely on that level 5 item. It is a golden grade 1 card. Its base attribute consumes 20 points of mental energy to increase the power of the next attack by 5 times. But now, he possesses the brand new talent to ignore resistance. As his stamina and spirit evaporate instantly, he commands the sublimation to begin. Surprisingly, the cost this time is much lower than before. What follows is a new card attribute that completely shatters his understanding of the rules. The level 6 golden critical strike card consumes 20 spirit points, but the next attack's power is increased by a staggering 50 times. Seeing that it can be used 3 times, he can't help but let out a cold laugh. If he uses this on the monsters outside, they are in for a shock. With the card's potential fully exhausted, he tucks this ultimate trump card into his pocket. With such a killer move, even a top-tier monster is manageable. Of course, he only has 3 shots, so he must be careful. Next, he turns his attention to a pure white pocket watch that is supposedly always accurate. It is encrusted with unknown gemstones. Deep down, he can't help but complain about how a simple watch could possibly be ranked as level 5. Still, who would complain about a free item? Just then, a deafening gunshot suddenly tears through the deathly silence of the forest. Looking toward the sound, the corpse of a monster holding a dagger in its mouth appears out of thin air on the clearing 100 meters away. It was the watchtower. Its detection triggered a shadow-piercing effect, revealing the invisible creature. However, the crisis is far from over. In the next second, the watchtower glows with a fierce red light. Countless locking halos fix onto the ground as a swarm of hideous creatures emerges. We see monsters charging frantically from the shadows as the watchtower's guns roar like a torrential downpour, firing level 3 bullets as if they cost nothing. The 100-meter warning zone has become an absolute death trap for these creatures. Lennon takes a sharp breath, his back already drenched in a cold sweat. He hadn't expected this. If the watchtower didn't have a built-in shadow-piercing effect, those monsters would have already slipped onto the train and finished him off. So, this is the reality of a slaughter platform. One either gets torn to shreds by endless hordes or waits for death in a state of pure, paralyzed terror. That mysterious entity who forcibly rerouted him clearly wants to wear him down in this slaughterhouse. To be honest, it's a rather cruel plan. But no matter who is hiding behind the scenes, Lennon won't let them have their way. After all, no matter how dangerous, this is still just a level 4 station. As the first wave of the offensive begins to fade, he climbs onto the roof and places his hand on the still hot barrel of the cannon to begin the sublimation. His mental energy is drained away in an instant, and a level 5 sentry is born. Its detection range immediately explodes to a staggering 150 meters. Not only can it carry 9 different weapons, but it can also pierce through any visual concealment, and it can even briefly detach from the train to pursue enemies. But he doesn't stop there. He turns and rushes toward the third carriage, knowing that while the sentry guards the exterior, an internal breach would be a disaster. Without hesitation, he touches the dusty observer in the corner to sublimate it. Once again, his physical and mental strength are ruthlessly siphoned away. A level 5 illusion observer takes shape. It provides full surveillance of the carriage and triggers a high-intensity hallucination effect the moment an intruder enters. After 3 consecutive forced sublimations, a wave of intense exhaustion washes over his brain. It's a heavy price to pay, but a necessary one. However, this is no time for a nap. He forces himself back to the front of the train, quickly dons his body armor, and grips his blacklight pistol tightly. With his physical defense maximized, he decides to deal with the remaining supplies once his strength recovers. He is determined to leave this place alive. At the same time, he reaches out and presses another switch to activate Wally. Since he's already here, he might as well strip the area of every useful resource. It would be a waste of an opportunity otherwise, wouldn't it? Once everything is arranged, a massive hunger begins to gnaw fiercely at his stomach. He simply sets up a barbecue grill outside the train. Amidst the continuous sound of gunfire, he begins to chew on roasted meat with surprising calm. Afterward, we see him open the system panel, where a major notification suddenly pops up. The 5th battle has finally come to an end. It seems Zhao Lin had incredible luck, finding a snack shop and sending over a pile of supplies. As for Li Shaosheng, he is still acting quite shamelessly. Li Shaosheng actually has the nerve to ask for weapons, promising to protect Lin in an exchange. He scoffs at the idea. The man truly thinks he's some kind of big-shot tycoon. Without a second thought, he blocks and deletes the contact. Immediately after, we see him post a massive bounty on the public channel to buy up all available gunpowder. An hour into the ceasefire, the sentry has carved out a small sanctuary amidst the piles of monsters. He sits there, taking a bite of roasted meat and a sip of cold beer. He has somehow managed to turn this living purgatory into a vacation spot, provided, of course, that one ignores the thick scent of iron hanging in the air. Once he is full, his mind begins to work. He realizes that if he throws the corpses of these headshot monsters into the processing station, he'll be sitting on a fortune. No sooner said than done. He buys a large bamboo basket from the trading hall, ties it firmly to his back, and grabs a thick wooden pole he has nearby. By tying a sharp dagger to the end of the pole, a makeshift hook is born. Taking advantage of the gap in the monster waves, he prepares to move. He rushes out of the carriage, frantically dragging the corpses back to the train. Soon, the processing station begins to hum with frantic activity. Blackhorn hound meat and swift serpent meat begin to pile up, and he even manages to extract a lizard skin capable of lowering one's presence. He even finds a black-tooth dagger with a corrosive effect. This isn't just a dangerous slaughter platform anymore. It's a mountain of treasure waiting to be claimed. The 100-meter safety zone has become his personal garden for gathering resources. As long as he doesn't cross the line, the level 5 sentry is unstoppable. Its heavy firepower is a total mismatch for these level 4 monsters. Even when a massive beast nest occasionally tries to charge, he remains perfectly calm. By activating over-limit mode, he can instantly blast them into a pulp, especially since he still holds the gunfire judgment module and armor-piercing rounds. If he could pierce the defenses of a creature like Shea, these flesh-and-blood monsters stand no chance. For 5 hours, the slaughter continues unabated. He has turned this deadly arena into an automated slaughterhouse. However, as he checks his ammunition, he suddenly takes a sharp breath of cold air. His original reserve of 1,000 rounds has dwindled rapidly under such intense fire. He realizes he has less than 400 bullets remaining. This slaughter platform is clearly designed to bleed a person dry. Just then, he senses something eerie shifting in the atmosphere around the train. The monsters on the periphery are deterred by the smell of blood, yet they refuse to leave. Instead, they seem to be watching him with terrifying patience. It feels as though they are waiting for a specific, horrific moment to arrive. Meanwhile, we see the sky above the station beginning to grow dark. He pulls out his pocket watch and sees the hands frozen at exactly 6:12 p.m. As night falls, he decides it is time to stop his risky scavenging. With practiced ease, he starts a campfire and places a piece of prepared serpent meat over the flames to roast, carefully calculating his gains from the last 5 hours. He has managed to gather a staggering 810 kilograms of lean meat, filling 4 storage slots. Thanks to the preservation features of the storage carriage, this haul is safe. These strategic supplies will surely be invaluable later. While the meat roasts, we see him pull up the system interface, where the chat room population has plummeted. The count has dropped to just over 2,000 people. Aside from him, everyone has already left the 6th station. Suddenly, a jarring message flashes across the screen. Tonight is the night for survival. The previous broadcast warned that the trial would begin in 3 days, and that time is now. Those who haven't reached level 2 are in trouble. The screen is flooded with desperate cries for materials, with some people offering everything they own just to obtain 30 kilograms of metal. Right on cue, Li Xiaoxing's lackeys appear, arrogantly shouting that if people don't want to die, they must buy resources from Li at the price of 1 train coin for 10 kilograms. He scoffs at the sight of these vultures. To be honest, they are shamelessly taking advantage of a life-or-death crisis. A quick scan reveals that at least 10% of the remaining survivors haven't met the level 2 threshold yet. This is a grim reality. Nearly 8,000 people have already been eliminated by these cruel rules. Those left behind are now willing to sacrifice every card they hold just to stay alive. Although he still has 16 train coins in hand, he knows the cost of the next upgrade will be astronomical. Since there are crops ready for harvest, he won't hesitate. Without a moment's delay, he posts a massive bounty on the public screen, offering upgrade materials for sale. He offers 30 kilograms of metal and wood for 1 train coin. The quantity is limited, and there is absolutely no room for bargaining. The moment the message is sent, the chat room descends into total madness. The Gunmaster has returned, and his prices are far better than Li Xiaoxing's. Desperate players beg for help, sending coins instantly. This move directly threatens Li Xiaoxing's monopoly, and his subordinates are quick to react. They lash out in frustration, calling the buyers fools and warning them they'll be stuck on future upgrades. Li Xiaoxing's followers are clearly losing their cool. Ignoring the petty bickering and insults, he keeps a cold eye on the trading panel. And then, in the blink of an eye, something happens. The materials he listed are snatched up instantly. 10 train coins land securely in his pocket. A very successful transaction indeed. While the chat room is filled with the wails of those who missed out, he calmly lists another batch of supplies. However, despite thousands of people competing, he only manages to earn a mere 3 additional train coins. It turns out the problem wasn't a lack of demand, but rather a lack of currency. This crowd of paupers, who haven't even touched a treasure chest, will soon be waiting for death in the next dark night. But to be honest, that has nothing to do with him. He listed his items purely to harvest the desperate. Amidst a screen full of private messages begging for freebies, a message from Pang Wenxuan suddenly catches his attention. Pang Wenxuan sends an image, pleading for 30 kilograms of metal to save his life. We see him open the file, revealing it to be a level 1 woodworking blueprint. In an era where everyone relies on guns, no one wants to use a useless woodworking skill without a blade. It's no wonder the poor man couldn't sell it. However, what is trash to others might not be so for him. He agrees to the trade, and the moment Pang Wenxuan sees the confirmation, he is overcome with joy. The man repeatedly praises him as a great person. He can't help but scratch his head, muttering to himself that being called a good person these days feels like an insult. Holding this supposedly trash blueprint, his true plan finally begins to surface. It was never about the metal, it was about the potential hidden within. Without hesitation, he activates his exclusive skill, Emperor's Ascension. In an instant, his mental power plummets to a dangerous 115 points. The once crude blueprint in his hand mutates directly into a level 2 black hardwood crafting guide. But he isn't finished yet. He quickly gathers 10 kilograms of wood, along with alloy gold fiber, to begin manufacturing on the spot. After that, he continues his work, focused on the next step of his evolution.